I'd like to call this meeting of the Folsom Cordova Unified School District to order. We'll start with our pledge. Alba Joy.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The broadcast is being made at the direction of the board, and that the broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. Superintendent, could you call roll, please?
Yes. Board Member Ranking?
Here.
Board Member Short?
Here.
Board Member Clark?
Here.
Board Member Reed?
Here.
Board Member Hoover?
Here.
And Student Board Member Kisning?
Here.
All are accounted for.
Thank you. All right, reporting out closed session.
We don't have any items to report out from closed session today.
Thank you. All right, special presentation, Folsom High School Career Technical Education, CTE SkillsUSA presentation.
This evening, we are very honored to have a great group of students with us, led by their teacher, Pam Goldman. And I know Ms. Cadell is going to introduce them in a few minutes, and our students are going to be making a presentation. But I just wanted to say just a couple of words about Ms. Cadell as our Career Technical Education Coordinator, and acknowledge the work that she's done in bringing not only CTE opportunities and grants into our district, but so far, and this is just so far, she's brought in over $5 million to our district. In addition to the new CTE building at Folsom High, she's working with Matt Washburn to allocate grant funding for the construction of a new greenhouse and barn in an effort to expand our existing Ag Academy at Cordova High. So the possibilities are continue on, and we thank Ms. Cadell for her leadership and always looking for those opportunities for additional funding and funding streams for our students. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Superintendent. Good evening, President Clark, board members, and Superintendent Collegiate. It's my pleasure to introduce the SkillsUSA advisor from Folsom High School, Pam Goldman. Pam has been a teacher in the district for the past 13 years, and currently she teaches in 2 career technical education pathways. Those are engineering and computer science. I really appreciate her leadership at Folsom in chartering and developing a high-quality chapter of SkillsUSA for our students, and I'm really pleased that her students are with her this evening to share the work that they've been doing at Folsom. Mrs. Goldman?
Thank you very much. So, as my principals have taught me, don't do something that students can do. So I'm actually not going to present. I have gotten my students to present. So 3 of my officers from the SkillsUSA team will be presenting to share with you what our chapter has been up to this year. And so I'm going to start with Alba Joy.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for allowing us to present today. As Ms. Goldman said, my name is Alba Joy, and I am president of our SkillsUSA Club at Folsom High. So SkillsUSA is a career technical education club, and we provide educational experiences in leadership, teamwork, citizenship, and character development. We provide a lot of activities such as a resume workshop, a job professionalism workshop, as well as a personality traits workshop. And so we just do a lot of activities which allow our students to gain more knowledge about the professional field and what talents and skills that they have would best be fit for a career in their future. And so with our club, we allow our members to participate on the regional and state level. So recently in January, we had the SkillsUSA regional competition. And so students were able to participate in a variety of competitions. I competed in engineering, technology, and design. Some of our members have competed in Quiz Bowl as well as related technical math. And so SkillsUSA provides a lot of different categories. So there's always something that students can find their interest in, and just spend your Saturday in a competitive setting to test your skills and just push them beyond comfort zones that they are placed in at school. And so with our club, there's this grant program called Chapter of Excellence. We've been doing it for the past few years. Our first year that we did it, we were able to receive $2,000, and last year we received $1,500. And so for this program, we have to complete a variety of activities. Thus far this year, we've participated in Folsom Community Day. So we helped clean up the railroad as well as clean up the area surrounding it. And we've done a lot of different activities which allow our members to have a bigger presence in the career fields as well. For example, we had our manufacturing, engineering, and architectural meeting. And so with that, our members served as escorts, so they were able to interact with the different engineering leaders in the area. And so we're continuing our Chapter of Excellence completion. We completed level 2 quite recently. And so we plan to continue on to level 3, and the amount that we receive will be announced soon. And so coming up, we have, we have the 53rd State Leadership and Skill Conference. It's going to be on April 16th, and it's going to be in Ontario, California. So about 26 members placed on the regional level, and they will continue on to the state level. And this, our club allows these students to test their skills on the state level, and this again not only pushes them to it pushes them to levels that school cannot provide for them, as well as it allows them to get a cool experience. They get to go to Ontario, which is 8 hours away, with a lot of their friends, and it not only builds memories but also allows them to build up their college apps. And so, as you guys are all familiar with the LCAP goals, there's 4 that we wanted to focus on. The first one being college and career readiness. So we do a lot of activities, as I mentioned before, to help students learn more than just what textbooks can teach. We did the resume workshops, so that allowed students to gain more insight on what makes a resume good, what makes you stand out to leaders and employers that you will most likely meet with in the upcoming years. And also career readiness. So in the CTE pathway that we have at Folsom High School, there's computer science, engineering, digital art, as well as video production. And so with our club, you're able to really see what you like to do. And with these competitions, you can really test what your talents are and how they can be suited in the professional field. And our second goal would be community partnerships. As I mentioned before with the MEA meeting, we allowed our club members to interact with different individuals in the district and the community. That allows us to have a bigger presence and just allows our students to not only interact with the teachers but also other adults that they'll meet. Our third goal would be high quality CTE and STEM programs. With SkillsUSA, in order to be in the club, you have to take a CTE class. So a lot of students, in order to be in the club, have taken a CTE class just for that. So not only does that allow them to be in the club, but it makes them take classes which they originally may not have intended to take, but once they take it, they realize that they do have skills in computer science and in programming and everything. And our last goal that we wanted to focus on was success in mathematics and English. So for English specifically, the resume workshop, it focuses on using your English skills not in a traditional setting, but in creating your resume, which a lot of English classes don't focus on. And then for success in mathematics, our club, we have a specific competition related to technical math, and so that allows them to practice their skills in that field as well. So SkillsUSA really just allows CTE students to harness their skills and pushes them to be a better professional and allows them to know what to expect when they're going into their job field. I'd like to introduce Aiden. Rohit, sorry.
Hello everyone, I'm Rohit Srivatsa, the treasurer of SkillsUSA. And before many students decide to join SkillsUSA, there's always the question why they should consider joining SkillsUSA. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through a few of the reasons. Number one, showcasing student skills on a state level. That's one of the primary attractions behind joining SkillsUSA, because people get to work all year long up to a state level goal, which they could hopefully accomplish and eventually take to another level. Another item that's very important before they consider joining SkillsUSA is the recognition that they get from FCUSD. FCUSD students get a lot of recognition from Folsom High and potentially from the district. Another thing is state champions. I'm sure everybody likes to win awards at the state level, and this is definitely something that a lot of kids really enjoy when they consider joining SkillsUSA. And some of the competitions that they participate in are Quiz Bowl, related technical math, video production, and photography. As you can see, there's a heavy emphasis on CTE because our school and our chapter emphasizes CTE through SkillsUSA. And probably one of the most important things that people gain through SkillsUSA is employability skills. SkillsUSA really makes students start considering building their resume so that they could take their skills that they learn at a high school level and potentially apply it at the college level and during their career. And I'd like to introduce our VP, Aiden.
Hello, my name is Aiden and I am the Vice President of SkillsUSA. So what I wanted to talk about was another reason why SkillsUSA is so valuable for the district, and that's its sustainability. So every year the CTE program receives many different grants, and one of the conditions for those grants is that there must be an extracurricular or outside organization, I guess, and in our case this is SkillsUSA. So SkillsUSA basically allows for these grants to be completed, and those grants provide for SkillsUSA blazers and advisor stipends and registration fees and travel expenses, all of which are really valuable for students, especially if they're planning to do a lot with the club. And another thing about why SkillsUSA is super sustainable is that it has regular meetings. So it has organized officer-led chapter meetings, and in these meetings, as Alba said before, we have things like resume building workshops and career readiness workshops, which are also really important for students, especially if they're planning to go into career technical jobs. And we also participate in a lot of community service activities. So this past year we participated on Folsom Community Service Day, and we worked at one of the railroads and we helped clean up that area, which was also another way for students to get involved in their communities, which is really valuable for them in the future as well. So overall, SkillsUSA is not just valuable in terms of creating memories and relationships and connections, but it also provides many different opportunities for students to show off their technical and their soft skills, which are all, of course, really important for their futures. And it provides a lot of career experience in technical fields because we have the competitions, we have workshops, and students can really show off their creativity and all of their skills through these things, which is really valuable for them in the future. So that's pretty much all, and thank you for listening to our presentation.
Questions, comments from the board? Mr. Short?
You were talking about the barn at Cordova High. I remember working on that with FFA many years ago in conjunction with the soil barn and everything there. Where are we at on that? I mean, there's been a lot of planning on that, and I'd like to hear how you're going about that.
There have been many generations that we've looked at, and we're still in a design stage at this point. We are putting in an application for Measure H funds from the City of Rancho Cordova
awesome.
to assist with that. So you'll see that application. So the complex, the idea that I have is because they're using the red bar now down the street, and I think it's a safety issue for students, and it doesn't allow for the growth and the high quality and industry specific equipment and space that we need to train our students. So it would actually be located for mill students and Cordova High School in the Ag and Culinary Academy, because they grow. A lot of it is, besides the animal science, it's also, we would have a greenhouse there as well. So the complex would compose of the barn with internal and external space for the animals to be outside, and then the greenhouse to grow things that can be used in culinary as well. And students can grow their own and then have plant sales. A big business partner is Soil-Borne Farms, which you probably know. The students are down there every week. They're, even in the bio classes, they're taking water samples out of the river, American River, and using that for analysis. So they're a huge partner, as well as FFA and our state agriculture education. They're very excited about it. So we are really at a proposal stage. So I would love to come back and share when we get to the completion and fully funded stage. So it's still kind of at a concept stage or draft stage at this point. So.
That's very exciting. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Shore.
Mr. Reed?
Yes, I actually just want to thank the three students for making that presentation and commend you. You were very articulate and very impressive speakers. I frequently cannot go a sentence without using the word Sometimes I like to use the double ums in a sentence, and I don't think either three of you used the word So that is very impressive, and I just want to compliment all three of you. Good job.
Mr. Hoover, anything? All right. Yeah, I just wanted to end off by saying congratulations, Alicia, and you'll probably get some kudos later on something else that I'll congratulate you on. But just a couple of questions for the students. In your club alone, how many students do you have? Alba, if you want to come up and answer that.
All three of you. How many students are in your chapter?
So SkillsUSA membership is open for all CTE students. So every student signed up in a CTE class is currently also signed up as a member for SkillsUSA, and our regular meetings are open for all of those members. And typically we have about a classroom full of students per each meeting.
Okay. And as far as the incoming freshmen or sophomores that get into that CTE program, how do you guys recruit them in, or do a presentation, or how does that work?
So quite recently there was So You Want to Be a Bulldog Night. So for the incoming freshmen, Folsom High holds this like orientation type thing, and there's a lot of different booths. And so we had our own booth, and so we were able to talk to incoming freshmen as well as their parents, and just inform them about what our club means and what it could do for them. So that's how we would talk to the freshmen.
Okay. Your career readiness, I assume you guys do like soft skills, like mock interviews and all that. Who facilitates that?
So generally it's the officer team who prepares the presentations and the workshops, and we also have the things like Alba mentioned earlier, the MEA. So we were able to interact with other people who are in the industries, and that's also another way for students to kind of get their hands wet and interact with all these people, which is also really helpful. So
you reach out to members in the community, they come in, they do the mock interviews. Do they critique the resumes as well, or is that just a separate thing?
So for our members, we asked them to turn in all their resumes, so that's how we would talk about how to better improve them and everything. But mainly the workshops themselves, that's how we try to lead them in the right direction.
So it's basically peer-led then, I take it, among peers.
And one more thing about the resumes. So the competitions themselves also require students to bring a copy of the resume, so students can show that to their judges, and their judges can kind of provide feedback for those resumes as well.
Great. All right. Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Great program.
Thank you.
All right. We'll move forward with the adoption of the agenda.
I'll move it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Student board?
Aye.
All right. Public participation. Time will be given to speakers at the discretion of the board chairperson. The law allows the public to address the board on any matter not on the agenda, but the law prohibits action by the board on non-agenda items. And I will let you know that time is limited to 3 minutes and 3 minutes only. If you go beyond that, sorry, we'll have to cut you off. So moving forward, our first speaker, Dennis Lamacha.
Hello there. Thank you first for allowing me to speak. My name is Dennis Lamantia. I actually am the president of several Rancho Cordova youth organizations, Little League, the Rancho Cordova Junior Lancers, and the new Rancho Cordova Track Club. So with that said, I came here to actually look for some advice on several issues that we've run into for each one of those. I'll keep it short, and maybe some guidance as to where who else I need to speak to, or send me in a direction is really what I'm looking for. First, I'll start off with the Little League. For the Little League, we have approximately 500 plus players in the Little League. We are currently at the Cordova Lane school. It's been closed for quite some time, but we use the property there. And we have 7 fields on the combination of the Cordova Lane property as well as the Park District. We have 1. And we use it for those kids. And one of the biggest issues we have is parking. And we were hoping that there was a way to use the Cordova Lane back facility that's just been repaired and asphalted over, and the basketball hoops have all been removed. We were hoping to be able to use that for parking. We've talked with the city regarding some of the potential for liability, as well as, and I could let them speak, but just to let you know what I know, potentials for liability and also the preparation for making it a parking lot. And they've agreed to cover any liability insurance, as well as the painting and unpainting, if you will, of the parking lot in the case that it was, if we needed to do it seasonally. So that's one of my first items I wanted to bring forward. Secondly, I want to run out of time. I'll jump onto the football, the Rancho Cordova Junior Lancers. I don't know what can be done here. I've talked to several community members and about some potentials. What we have is a situation where we belong to a league that follows high school boundaries, and based on that, they're cutting it. To start it off, I've just revived this program, and took about 3 years. We made it to the point where we won some championships, both cheerleading as well as football. And to make a long story short, they're allowing another organization to open up in Pleasant Grove, cutting us out of taking any children from the newest areas of Rancho Cordova. I ran out of time.
Okay. Yes, you did. And moving forward, I will ask the superintendent to reach out to you.
Okay.
And hopefully include Peter in the mix as well. That way, we can try to work together and figure this thing out.
I don't know if it's possible or not, but we have another speaker on the list that was going to yield their time to me.
Would that be Cassie Reyes?
Yeah.
Is Cassie Reyes here? Yield time? Please continue.
Good. I get this last piece in then. Anyway, I appreciate what you said there. If you can have someone reach out to me and let me know what we can do about that. There's been several ideas that I got actually from speaking to Peter actually today. Oh. About this. In any case, the final one is, again, a request for some, there's a place, I don't know what to call it, an area, I think it's a maintenance area outside of the high school stadium that's used primarily for storage of storage containers. And our storage containers are all parked there inside of a fence. And the new Rancho Cordova Track Club, the best place to be based is right next to the track. So we were wondering where I have to go, or how I have to, where we have to do to get a space for a storage container to be parked there. That was the final item that I had.
Awesome.
And then, so I don't know, whatever, if you can give me some guidance as to how to follow up on any one of those, pointing me in a direction, as I mentioned, I think would be great.
Yeah, Superintendent Collegian, if we can follow up on that issue too, and if you can, could you please keep me in the loop as well?
Yes, I'll be in touch, or my staff will be in touch with you, Mr. Lamancha, and I'll keep all the board.
All right.
in the loop on
Well,
that.
thank you again for all your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Rod Borba.
Rod Borba, community member, Rancho Cordova since 1988, president of Cordova Girls Softball. And Dennis asked me to come out here in support of him because I don't know if you know Dennis. He's somebody we all strive to be like. This guy is really, he's been president of Rancho Cordova Little League. taken on the Junior Lancers, which is, you know, the feeder system for the high school. And it's been great to listen to Peter at our athletic association talk about the future. And Sarah, I know that you like your sports, and having that community link between the high school and the community sports. So nowadays we're dependent on the Rod Borbas, the Dennises, to provide youth a positive environment athletically and mentally in a competition, along with our coaches and stuff. So, you know, I'm here to support Dennis in terms of his movement to make things happen for the Rancho Cordova youth. He's working hard. One of the things that's really become part of the issue, you know, I attended many years ago the joint board meeting with Folsom Cordova School District, Elk Grove School District, and the City Council, right when the city became a city. And in that, there was the big discussion. I don't know if anybody was here for that meeting. Were you here, Joanne? So I was there, and the big discussion was, you know, can Rancho Cordova and Folsom Cordova take over? I know Matt was there, but and you know, the Folsom Cordova, I mean, the Elk Grove School District was not going to give up Anatolia. We all know that. You know, Peter pays Paul to pay the bonds, and that's the way it goes. So in that scenario, what's happening there is that, you know, 25 to 30% of our youth in our leagues come from that area. And the future of football in Rancho Cordova is at stake with this. So I support Dennis's move to try to solve these big issues. You know, we're trying to create opportunities. This track club that the coach on Cordova High is trying to do is a great endeavor. So. And final, I want to thank you. We're going to be coming out with our youth to thank you for the great fields at Mills Middle School. We've been there this is our 55th year. So thank you very much for your time.
All right. Thank you, Rod. And on a side note, sir, I just want to congratulate you on your honor of being Rancho Cordovian of the Year. Yeah. Sorry about that. All right. I'm going to say Vice Mayor Garrett Gatewood.
All right. First off, just thank you for all the hard work you guys do in our school district. And so first off, we're here. I just want to make sure you understand we're your partner. We're the city. You know, our goal is to change the reputation of Rancho Cordova and our schools and do whatever we can. And we happen to have a very, very, very large pocketbook. So we fund everything. I mean, we got $8.5 million, and then we have a funding of $35 million. And our whole goal is to make a good presentation of our schools and fund everything. So, and make sure that our kids are well taken care of. So that being said, money should never be an issue when it comes to stuff. If you guys need us to help with the insurance or paving or striping to help out the Little League, we're here to do that. If you need goggles, for goodness sakes, for our swim team, so they don't have to take off their goggles mid-race and hand it to another person to put on, we are here for you. You shouldn't have containers with holes in them full of rats and black widows. We will do what it takes. All you have to do is read. I mean, to go for Measure H funds to pay for a barn, when I hear that we have jerseys that literally someone rounded a base and the number fell off because it was duct tape on. We don't have to do that. We're here for you. We want to make our school experience something above everything else. And you have a whole city, and our whole focus is on Mills, Mitchell, and Cordova High. So we're here for you. If you need something, you need money, if you're hurting, let's not take it out on the schools. Let's not take it on education or athletics. The one thing Rancho does have is a lot of businesses. And speaking as one of those major business owners in the region, we're here to fund our school because this is my next generation of workers and people. So if there's anything we can do, put it in the Measure H fund or just come find us. We shouldn't hear from our citizens that they couldn't find jerseys or this or any of our programs. Go through everything from mills across the board to Little League. If it's used, broken, or has some other school district's name on it, I want to scrub it off. We will pay for that. That's without question. You can come to me and be like, Garrett, we need X. And I'll be like, yes, you're getting X. So this is a partnership. We're here with you guys. We realize you are the thankless job who got tricked into being board members for the school district. I understand. But if it's a money thing when it comes to Cordova High, there's not one person. Sorry, that was mean. It's not one person on my board that won't support you guys. So once again, we have your money if you need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett.
Thank you, Garrett. I'll get that list to you next week.
Yeah.
All right. Terry Hio? Kyle?
Hello, everybody. I'm a little nervous, and I put in a full day, and I teach second grade, and I was measuring for dinosaurs up the walk, and I was planting in the garden, and I wear jeans, and I wear tennis shoes. So this is professional as I get. I want to talk to you about the coronavirus because I need guidance and clarification. I feel like the information that I'm reading, and God knows I'm reading it, I got mountains of it, it's all coming from Daniel Thigpen, but it's not clear to me because often it'll say, go here, go there, go this, go. I don't have time. I need the clear answers, and I'd like to start first with cleaning the schools. It appears to me that it's not standard across the schools. I hear that we have a machine that'll clean the schools. Our school has never seen that machine. I was then told that it had to be processed through the health department to get the machine. I was told that we had a meeting a couple of Mondays ago where and I think that was put out to the general public, that all of our head custodians attended. Ours did not. Maybe they didn't get the information. We're cleaned every other day. If you've been in my room, I don't get this spacing. I lost my father. Oh, I'm so sorry. I want to hug you. I don't get any 6 inches or feet. So I need my room cleaned. I'm doing it myself. I'm paying for it myself. And I asked for sanitizing spray. I was told, science girl, don't you know that viruses can't be killed with that spray? That was what I got. And now I find we're supposed to have the spray. We have 1 for every 6 classes. That's the first thing I need taken care of. Somebody buy some spray bottles, please. Maybe the guy from Rancho. Sorry, I'm not. Okay, the next thing is I need clarification. This is the big one. We all know that the tests are not there. They're not being tested. People are not being tested that go in and present with symptoms. They are being quarantined, but they're not being tested. And so the line comes down to what I think is most recently said, we have no, what's the word we're using? Confirmed cases. Well, I'm here to tell you that I think we do have a confirmed case, maybe not tested. That's the problem. So that verbiage needs to be talked about. I'm 62. I have COPD. I'm dedicated. I've been with this school district 20 years. I have tons of parents who will stand behind me, and I'm sure if I'd asked them today, 3 of them are taking their kids out because they want to have not have them in this situation. And I'm told, you can't say anything you know, Terry. You can't say if you know somebody's out on quarantine. Even if I don't mention the name, it has to all come from the district. I love my kids, I love my parents, and I love me. And I'm really worried. Today, the thing from Thigpen comes out and says, if you're a sub and you're over 62 and you have compromising health, don't take the job. I'm there in the job. What are you offering me? I have 12 seconds. I'm done. God, somebody help us. I don't think we're getting the answers.
All right. Thank you, Terry. I will ask the superintendent to follow up with you and address your concerns. Okay. You're very welcome. All right. Stan Jones.
Oh, it's on the agenda.
It is on the. All right. Got you, sir. All right. Let's go with reports of district organizations. Student advisory.
So we had our SAB meeting this past week, and we had an LCAP presentation by Dr. Kaligian and her team, and I was shared by my secretary of what was said during the meeting, and it's it's apparent that all students are very proud of their schools and are proud of their teachers and feel like they're learning and appreciate their learning environment that the district has for them. And when it comes to what they believe are academic barriers, for the high school level, it's academic stress. It's knowing or fearing what they're going to do after high school, what they're doing during high school. And at the middle school level, it's student division or sometimes bullying or feeling isolated, which just, it's a domino effect once it reaches high school. And then adding academic stress to that, that's other things that were brought up and mentioned to me. Besides that, we're finalizing our talent show that hopefully will go on at the end of April. And at the direction of President Clark at our last meeting, I'm working on a committee to get more of these student thoughts and ideas present to the board.
Thank you, ma'am. California School Employees Association.
Rob Thomas, Chapter President. Good evening, school board members, Dr. Collegian. First of all, I wanted to echo Mr. Reed's comment about those students. Very impressive presentation by those students. They must be taking some public speaking classes, but that was awesome. I wanted to thank Dr. Collegian and Ms. Crawford and Mr. Ogden for joining us at our executive board meeting for our union last night, making sure that our leadership was informed of what's going on, particularly in budget matters. That's going to be something that we're going to need to keep those lines of communication open and do some problem solving together. So I very much appreciate that. So I know you guys got your hands full with all the issues related to the coronavirus, and whatever I can do to help message to my folks, I'm more than happy to do. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thomas. Folsom Cordova Education Association.
Good evening, Angelica Miklos, FCEA President. I echo most of what Rob just said, really all of it. Dr. Collegian, Rhonda, and Don came to our exec board meeting as well this week. There were some hard questions posed, but it was a good dialogue, and that's what we need. Our bargaining sessions as well have had some really good dialogue. We're making lots of progress with MOUs towards some of our groups, and we really appreciate that. And I know we'll be talking, well, we talked a little more about budget at this last session this week. And again, just some really open, good, honest dialogue. Rhonda, we really appreciate the numbers you brought. That it puts things in perspective when you can really see it and know exactly what you're talking about. So that was fantastic. We're excited that Christy Blanford is going to be part of the team on a regular basis, and then we'll have that direct pipeline right there all the time, and you don't have to be pulled from your office. So some good things happening there. Thank you for working with us with the coronavirus situation. I know it's unfolding as we speak, and there's many challenges ahead. Today certainly proved that. I want to keep you informed as we move forward as well. If I'm hearing of sites, I mean, Ms. Hayo spoke for Blanche Sprentz already, but if I start hearing of sites that are not being cleaned as they should be, or there's other issues, I'm going to pass that along so that we can work together and get it fixed. And as Rob said, if there's anything I can do, please reach out to me. I'm trying to keep the communication going with our people as well. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Folsom Cordova Leadership Association. Thank you, Betty Jo.
No report for DLAC.
All right, awesome. Okay. Agenda consent.
I move the consent agenda with the exception of K.
Second it.
Item K is noted. Superintendent.
Yes. Item K is approved Mills Middle and Mitchell Middle School bell schedule revisions. Reed, did you want us just to talk a little bit about how we came to the different bell schedules?
Yes, please. I'm supportive of the proposal, but I just want to have the public be informed about kind of how the decision making was made on that.
We made sure that we had, again, input from teachers and support staff at both Mills and Mitchell Middle Schools. I want to thank Ms. Alleman and Amy Strawn and Jim Hoover for thank you for dialoguing with the staff on multiple meetings to look at different options for a 6-period day with a 0-period option. And after different options were discussed, staff were surveyed as well as students, and they came up with the 6-period day with the 0-period option at Mitchell. And through the pre-registration process, we saw a number of students who are interested in doing the 0-period, and then we also asked which ones would be in need of transportation. So we have those numbers. We'll be able to accommodate all of that, but that was part of the process of the ongoing dialogue that our staff had with both school staff in that process.
Great. Any other questions from the board?
I'll move.
Second.
It's been moved.
It's been moved. It's been moved by Mr. Reed, second by Mr. Short. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Student board?
Aye.
All right. Okay. Discussion action item 11A, adopt resolution number 03-1220-31, establishing attention to transition to district-based elections. Superintendent?
Yes, the proposed resolution before you tonight would change the way that members are elected to the governing board of the district. Currently, our board members are elected at large, meaning that all voters in the district vote for all candidates. If the resolution is adopted, the district will move to a new system of by trustee area elections in which each member of the board is elected by the voters of a separate trustee area. The trustee areas must be specifically designed to ensure that members of any protected class of voters, for example, racial minorities residing in the district, are ensured a fair voice in board elections. Under the California Voting Rights Act, at-large election systems are subject to legal challenge if they interfere with the ability of a protected class of voters to either elect the board member of their choice or influence the outcome of the election. There is a low threshold of proof that an at-large system violates the law. Any history of racially polarized voting in an area occupied by the district, even in a non-board election, whether political office or ballot measure, and no proof of discriminatory intent is required. Having conferred with our district legal counsel and after reviewing steps with other school districts that they're taking to establish by trustee area elections, staff has developed a procedural plan for the board to make this transition. In this regard, staff believes that this transition, even if there is no history of racially polarized voting in this area, will serve to promote the effective participation of all citizens, including members of minority racial groups or other protected classes who may have historically faced obstacles in electing candidates of their choice to the Board of Education. We also note that many localities and agencies have faced threatened litigation under the CVRA. Indeed, such a threat has been received by the district, has been included in the board agenda materials, and is available upon request. Making this transition now within a strict timeline, particularly in time to implement the new system prior to the next election, can greatly reduce the potential risk of expensive litigation and attorney fees. So the process for making this transition, we start with adopting the resolution that's before the board tonight. Second, we adopt the resolution allowing staff to file for a waiver from the State Board of Education, which would be the next item. And then third, we're going to hold subsequent board hearings and actions, a series of 4 hearings, to allow the public input and comment and provide extensive input, consideration, and informed revision of proposed maps. Input may include, for example, where boundary lines are drawn, whether it adjusts the number of board members. And we have a tentative schedule that staff has developed that will take us through this process. The schedule may change based on circumstances as they develop. For example, if proposed maps are revised, they must be republished prior to being considered at a subsequent board meeting. To remain under the safe harbor, the board's procedures must be completed within 90 days of tonight. So you see our timeline between now and June to complete this process. And this is the first step in this process. Any questions?
Any questions from the board?
I have one question.
Ms. Ranking?
This was the first time I remember hearing a comment that increased the number of board members. So there is a possibility we could be increasing the board. I mean, are we close to that number?
I'll defer to legal counsel, Mr. Paul Gant.
Yeah, that was the first time I remember hearing it.
It really depends upon the analysis that's performed. We in the district engages expert demographers who analyze the entirety of the district, and if it is at least conceivable, although I have no information at this time to suggest that it would be necessary, it is conceivable that in order to promote the interests of a protected class, it could change the number of board members. But at this point, that's uncertain. It would have to be something that would be developed and raised and discussed within the course of the 4 hearings that the superintendent mentioned.
Thank you. That was just the first time I heard mention of that, and it just caught my attention.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
interesting,
Me
because
as
I've
well.
thought, at what point do we reach an enrollment number, or, number of residents that we bump up?
Right.
So I'm curious to see how this all plays out now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Reed?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank staff for making this recommendation. As you know, I'm a strong proponent of developing trustee districts. I first asked staff to take a look at this back in January of 2019. And I just want to share my rationale for why I'm so passionate about creating districts. And it's because when ran for school board in 2018. It's a very large district. It's approximately 120,000 residents within the district, and for one individual to be able to campaign and knock on that many number of household doors is a daunting task. And if it wasn't for a very understanding employer that allowed me to use all of my 230 hours of vacation every afternoon to take off work so I could go around and knock on doors, I'm not sure if I would have been able to have run for the school board. And obviously I understand that most people probably do not have that understanding of an employer to be able to do that. And I think there are a lot of talented individuals out there with educational backgrounds that would make wonderful school board members. And I think anything that we can do to reduce the number of households for people to be able to campaign effectively and run for school board and have competitive elections is a good thing. So that is the reason why I was very outspoken in January of 2019 and why I am very excited to see this today on our agenda.
Okay. Mr. Hoover, anything?
Not at this time.
All right. Questions from the board? Or comments, I mean? Mr.
Anyone from the public?
Was there anyone from the public?
Right there.
Ma'am?
Yeah,
Come on.
I'll come back after the.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Please come to
We
the
just
podium.
just want to hear your comments. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then come back to it.
Good evening. I'm in supported by district elections. Someone told me about this, and I thought I do have a story. I was a former employee for a year of Folsom Cordova Unified School District, and I worked at Mitchell Middle School, and I worked at a nearby elementary school, so I was part-time. I saw how unequal the health services were in Rancho compared to Folsom. I was a school nurse. Maybe I said that. And so I did set up, I did join that program to check the children's teeth, and I found 2 wonderful dentists to volunteer and check. And I had to find, in Folsom, they had nurses to help other nurses do the vision and scoliosis screening, but I had to find my own nurses to do that. Luckily, I made some friends that helped me. And also, at one of our monthly school nurse meetings in Folsom, they talked about teaching CPR and getting AEDs in the schools. I don't know what's happened since that time. This is quite a few years ago. But I had volunteered information that my teenage babysitter had taken a training class, had learned CPR, and she had actually came saved a life, and she didn't on one evening that she was going to babysit, and good excuse for not coming to babysit. But so what happened is, so I stayed there a year, and the next year I did hear that a teacher had a heart attack at Rancho High School, and there was no one to help him. So I think if you had by district elections, those types of inequalities would not be there. Rancho would have just as fine education and facilities as, Rancho and Folsom would be the same. Thank you.
Could you please state your name for our recording?
Yeah, Patricia Johnson.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Okay, any other comments from the public? Great. Questions from the board?
Comments. I just want to kind of follow up with what David's saying, but I think I've been on the board here 17 years, and I think people forget why I ran and where I come from. And when I ran, it was cityhood was in the midst of happening for Rancho Cordova, and they needed a representative for that area. So I was recruited in, like the councilman said, or tricked into becoming a board member, but I was an honor to do it. But it was a time when there was trying to split the district, and it was Folsom against Rancho type of attitude. And unluckily, I really believe in a unified district working together for all kids, no matter whatever demographic, social, economic they come from. And that comes from my history where I grew up. And I'm going to talk a little bit. This is going to get a little emotional for me, but my mother, she passed away about a year ago, and she was from Mexico. Bless her soul. And but she gave me the courage to represent a lot of things that I saw where I grew up with. Was one, she was the co-founder of the Council of Mexican American Council in the Valley, which represented the voice for those kids that didn't have a voice in the education system down in the schools in that valley, and also the parents to be able to help them be successful in school. That council has been successfully buried. You probably heard about it, probably in Tulare and all those areas. My mother was the one that created that. So I grew up with that and seeing her working in the migrant education, working with the field kids and the illegal folks in down there. And I was always growing up around that. And I grew up in that environment. Yo puedo hablar español. I'm Mexican. So a lot of people in the community don't know I'm Hispanic. And I'm kind of appalled by it because I've been talking Spanish for a long time here, for 17 years. And every once in a while, everybody says, hey, speak Spanish to me. I say, okay, yo puedo hacer eso. But that grew up with me. And so part of me that wanted to represent this district, but all kids, and especially the kids that we see in the Rancho Cordova. We do have the Title I schools. We do have the subgroups there. We do have the communities there that I've been out into the taquerias and working with the families that are afraid to come to these meetings and talk to us directly. But that's what my mother did. She went to the community. My father was a community liaison, went to their homes to help those people have us, that culture, and all kids to have a voice to help them be successful. So this comes dear to my heart because I've been thinking about this for a long time, not just a year ago, about districts and having that representation. But I do believe this board has that representation. As you can see, Mr. Clark, African American, I'm Mexican American. We have Josh is also from that background. And so I think we've done a good well of representing since we prevented the split of the district and gave a lot of representation. So I am for this because I think it will give that perception, I believe, but right now we are in compliance. But we do need to, with the growth we have, I mean, when we're talking about splitting the district, we did some studies that maybe 21,000. We are a big district, but not huge. Right. Elk Grove is what, 90,000 ADA? Mm-hmm. San Juan is much bigger. We're only at 21,000. Maybe in about 15 years, 35, they think about 35, maybe 50,000, then the economy of scale and maybe the span of control of a district being split. But we can't do that now because we have a big building here the cost would be so much to do that, but we need to be considered unified. And I think with this, we can still be unified and work towards all kids and still represent the subgroups that we should all do for, like we all do. And that's dear to my heart, and I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
Ms. Ranking?
And we do have a woman. So, okay. Just one. I think I've known this was inevitable. It was going to happen. My biggest concern is that when you go to trustee areas, that sometimes you get a narrow vision and you need to understand our whole district. And this is it's 2 cities, it's a complicated district, and I would just hate to lose the insight that these board members bring, recognizing the whole district, taking the time to learn about it, and not basing your decision on an area that you represent or being swayed by an area you represent. So that's my biggest concern. I hope to be here after this next election happens, but we'll see what happens. So thank you.
Mr. Hoover?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on. I wasn't really planning on saying anything, but I feel like while I will be supporting the resolution tonight, I don't quite share the same enthusiasm as some of my colleagues on how good of an impact it will be. I do think it's critical that we have a representative board, but as my colleague Ms. Ranking shared, under our current setup, we are responsible and accountable to all voters in the district. My fear is that if we split this district into multiple sections, that it could lead, maybe not for this board, but maybe for a future board, could lead to more divisiveness down the line, could lead to more conflict. So that is a concern I share. Maybe more concerning than that, however, is that based on the population numbers, I think we have to wait and see, but there is a chance that currently, under our current system, we could potentially have 5 board members from Rancho Cordova on this board. Mm-hmm. If we go to a district-based election, I think there is a very real possibility that it's the representatives in Rancho Cordova are a permanent set number moving forward, which could honestly have the opposite impact of what the goal of this resolution is trying to achieve. So I guess because of the unique demography of our district, I do have some concerns about this. That said, we are under, intense scrutiny on this issue, and I think the state law is pretty clear on what we need to do. So I will be supporting the resolution, but I didn't want to do that without kind of sharing some of the concerns I have, and hopefully some of them we can mitigate. But those are some fears that I have moving forward into this process.
All right, great. Well, I will make a comment. All right, thank you. I will make a comment. I didn't get tricked into running for a Board of Education. What I did get tricked into is becoming a PTSA president at Cordova High School by doing a presentation, and I ended up being in that role for 2 years. But my decision to run for Board of Education was because I understood Rancho Cordova. I lived there for 10 years, and I love that city, and I'm not going anywhere. But what I wanted to do, on the other hand, is learn about Folsom and learn about the culture there. So as a board member, I didn't just quite focus. I said, yeah, I'm the only Rancho Cordova resident running at the time, but I didn't focus on that because my main concern was the whole district. So that's why I make it a point, and I'm at Folsom events, I'm at Rancho events, because I want to know that whole district. And even though I'm for this, because I do think it needs to be broken into districts, it's not going to stop me from heading out to Folsom and checking out a PTA meeting or checking out a play or participating in an Academic program or going back to Rancho Cordova and looking at their CTE or ag program or checking out their basketball program, or, and there's been some times when I've done double duty going to a Vista game and flying over to Cordova, and thank God this year they played each other, so I just sat on one side one half, sat on one side the other half. But it's all about representing the whole district, because you know, it's great to meet the parents, but what is it really about? It's about our kids. And, you know, and I don't care if it's Joanne living in Folsom, she's down in Rancho Cordova because she's caring about the kids. David, Josh, same thing. I mean, I think we'll all take a role in this and represent the whole district, even though I guess we'll be in different districts or wherever the demographer works out there. But I just wanted to give my 2 cents on that. You know, it's not going to deter me just because if I'm lucky in November, that I'm in a box in Rancho Cordova, because I'm not, and I'm not going to be. I'm going to be out in Folsom as well. I hate to say it, I'm a big Bulldog fan of football. I'll say it, I'm a big basketball fan for Cordova. You know, baseball, I love Cordova baseball. I love Folsom basketball too, but my heart is more in Rancho because I live there. But it doesn't stop me from going to each site. It doesn't stop me from going to a Vista PTSO meeting or a Folsom High PTA meeting, or I know we have very few in Rancho Cordova. I hope to resurrect that sometime and get those parents involved, but it wouldn't stop me from going to those meetings. So with that being said, I just want to give my 2 cents on that. I'm all for this districting thing, but trust and believe, I am going to be throughout the city of Folsom and Rancho Cordova.
I'll make a motion to move it.
All right.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Student board?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, she's at large. All right, I'm gonna close the open session, open up the public hearing. Request for education code waiver of elections pertaining to district-based board member elections. And I do believe I have a speaker on this. Carolina Hoover? No, that's okay.
I got lost. I'm not familiar with this area. And I'm a grandmother and a grandaunt. And I was a social worker for 20 years for Sacramento County. So I have children that I know in all the school districts. I'm for this waiver so that they don't have to have a special election in order for by district to be installed. In several, perhaps this is a unique, perfect environment here in Folsom, Cordova, but in other areas it isn't in Sacramento County. And there are people that need their voice heard, and like you said, they won't come to the meetings. But that still has to be an approach, has to be done in order to help these people be in the civic engagement. There's an association over in the north area of Sacramento. It's called the Benito Juarez Association, and they specifically are to help immigrants, mostly Mexican immigrants, to learn the language, to get immigration status, and to get citizens. And for the very first time, a great many of them voted in this election. And it was such a big deal. I mean, you can't even imagine how it was for these people to vote and be a part. This is the first wave of civic engagement. So there are a lot of steps that still need to be done, and it's very important to waive that elections law so that you can just go on with the by-district elections. Actually, I'm not familiar with this school district. I'm not familiar. I can't even pretend to know that I know something about this. I had foster children that were here, and but I had a very little interaction with the Folsom Cordova School District, Rancho Cordova District. So that's all that I'm here to be. I'm here on behalf of the Spanish-speaking community, Benito Juarez, and also I'm been on the Latino stakeholders with Councilman Eric Guerra for about 3 years now. And my participation is to give input on how to do an HR report, how to make sure that they're in compliance, and how to best outreach into the Latino community, the Black community, and the Asian community. So that's all. I hope that this will help you understand me personally as a grandmother and a grandaunt, and the personal people that I was their grandmother, their godmother, their mother. And I just want to say that I hope that you'll take this to heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Could you please reintroduce yourself so we have your name in the recording? Thank you.
My name is Carolina Flores. Carolina Elena Flores.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you.
All right. Absolutely.
Rob Thomas, President. I was a little confused about the discussion in terms of is there any change to the obligation that the board members have to serve the interest of the entire school district, even if they are elected from a subsection of the district? Or is it like it is now where there's just a balancing of interests in an attempt to find fair and equitable solutions to the problems of the district?
I would say it's the second that you mentioned. Our board would still be representing all of the district as we bring agenda items to the board. They will still deliberate, and those agenda items impact our entire district. So that part won't change.
So yeah, I mean, if the overall responsibility of all the board members is to do what's best for the district, but they come from different sections of the district to have a better understanding of the needs of that section of the district, it seems like it would be an enhancement to the situation that we have. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Back to the board, Mr. Reed.
Yeah, I would just highlight that each board member, even though there would be districts, their fiduciary responsibility will be to the entire district, to each of the 22,000 students, to each of the teachers, to the entire school district, to every one of our 32, soon to be 33 schools. That is our fiduciary responsibility, regardless of where we physically live within that district.
Mr. Short?
As like I was saying, we're a unified district. We're going to represent all the kids no matter what their demography is or demographics. But in district areas, like I was saying, like Mr. Clark and myself, we live in that community. We probably have more engagement with those people in the community. I still go up to Folsom. I still do all those things. But being part of the Rancho Cordova area and part of the Hispanic community like I am, it's part of me. I can be able to go in the community and speak Spanish and engage. And I think the culture trusts me probably a little bit more than somebody coming there, because the culture is, they're really apprehensive to coming to meetings. And so, those are the people that we can represent and engage them a little bit better. I think this will be an opportunity to do that.
All right.
Real quick,
Mr. Hoover.
Robin, let me just clarify my comments from earlier. I mean, when I say it could lead to divisiveness, I qualified that right by saying I don't think that I don't have a concern about the current board. I think my concern is the potential. I mean, we don't know who future boards will be, right? So, it's a concern that I have. It doesn't mean that it's going to come to fruition, but it is something that has happened in other areas and has the potential of happening when you're not accountable to that entire electorate.
I appreciate you addressing that, and I think in any kind of board there are going to be people who see things differently, and I was not intending to call you out on that point at all. I mean, people see things differently. As long as I think the obligation of the board is to find solutions that meet the overall needs of the district, I am sure that responsible people will work it out.
Any other comments from the public? Board?
I'll make a motion to move the request for a waiver.
Yep, we're still in public hearing.
Oh, we're in the public hearing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. I will now close public hearing. We'll now open session.
I'll make a...
Let me get to the discussion item. So item 13.
That's what we just discussed.
Yeah. So discussion action item 13A, adopt resolution number 03-1220-32 request for waiver of election pertaining to district-based board member elections. Any discussions? I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to
Second.
adopt a resolution. Oh, you don't need to. He'll just second it.
All right. Moved by Ms. Ranking, second by Mr. Short. All those in favor?
Aye.
Student board?
Aye.
All right. Motion carries. Great job. Boy, that was easy. Yeah. I was really expecting fireworks, to be totally honest with you. All right. So, discussion action item. Approve 2019-2020 second interim financial report for period ending January 31st, 2020 with qualified certification. Superintendent?
Yes, this evening we're bringing to you the second interim report, which is due to the county by mid-March. And we've been talking about the ongoing budget reporting process. And we did mention some of the assumptions that are in this report at last meeting's budget study session. So we'll have more of the specifics in the presentation that Ms. Crawford is going to share with us. So Ms. Crawford, please.
All right.
Thank you. Okay. So we will be presenting our second interim report tonight. This is for the period ending January 31st, 2020, and this encompasses all of our revenues and expenditures for that time period. The first slide summarizes what options we have available when we do submit our budget to SCOE and to the state. Along with that qualification, the certification, we have multiple interim reports that we submit to the board as well, and those 3 interims are here with those different dates. So tonight we will be recommending qualified certification. This is the same certification that we recommended for first interim. The main reason we are continuing with that qualified certification is with our structural deficit. It is increasing over the next 2 years and will also continue to increase as we are looking at adopted budget in June. When our budget was approved by SCOE for first interim, we had some directives from Dave Gordon, Superintendent of Sacramento County Office of Education. They did acknowledge that we had made substantial improvement towards our deficit and towards making some reductions. However, we did not reach the amount that they had required us to meet at first interim. So they recognize that, but they are still continuing to ask for a plan that shows what those reductions are and shows that we can reduce our structural deficit. So this next slide summarizes all of the budget revisions from adopted budget back in June. It includes the 45-day revise that we had in August, the first interim reduction or first interim report that we had in December, and then tonight's second interim report with the projected budget on the far right. Some of the changes since first interim, our federal revenue has increased a little over $800,000. And you can see what the major pieces of that $816,000. Our other state revenue also increased substantially. The biggest piece of that was the special education preschool. Those are one-time dollars, and we had talked about that at first interim. So this is what we are estimating our one-time dollars are going to be. We have actually received half of that so far. We are projecting to receive the other half in the spring, but we do expect to receive the full $1.5 million. That is one time only, so we will be looking at ways that we can spend it on one-time purchases rather than ongoing purchases. Some of the other local revenue increases, a little over $280,000, and those are broken out for you here. The largest piece of that was miscellaneous income, and then reimbursements from our ASB and our trustee groups that reimburses us for the expenditures that show up on our books. Our salary and our benefits decreased a little over $800,000.
On the certificated side, we had some adjustments for open positions. We continue to have some unfilled positions that we are using outside services to fill. There were some adjustments for some extracurricular activities. Some of those were actually just moved from certificated to classified. So you'll see an adjustment on both sides of that. On the classified salary side, we made some adjustments for the minimum wage increase as of January 1st. And then we also made some additional open position adjustments. On the benefits side, we made adjustments for those open positions. And then we also did some further adjustments for the 1% payroll surcharge that the board approved. In December, we made some further adjustments for that. On the supplies and other operating, we increased a little over $2 million, and I've broken out some of those categories here. On the other outgo side, we had just a slight increase, and that was mostly for indirects. Our contributions decreased. Special ed decreased a little over $250,000. Transportation went up, but the net of those two was still a decrease. On the components of fund balance, our designations on our legally restricted categoricals, those did decrease a little over $500,000. Those are our restricted categoricals. That's our title programs, mental health services, Medi-Cal dollars. On the designation piece, we have indicated the one-time dollars for special ed. So we have indicated that 1.5 here. We've actually set it aside until we decide how we want to spend those dollars. And then we've also continued to set aside dollars for next year, 2021, and for 21-22. And we were able to add a little over $1.2 million to that set aside, which will help us in the next 2 years going forward. So getting to the fun part of the multi-year projections, these are our assumptions that we used for the current year and the next 2 years. The two biggest adjustments that we made on the multi-years, for the 2021 year, the COLA at first interim, we had estimated 1.79%. That has increased to 2.29%, so that has been included in the multi-year. The other big change was in 21-22. That was also a lower amount. We are going with Department of Finance's projection of 2.71%. I say that hesitantly because we know COLA is fluctuating. And as we're looking at what's going on in the economy right now, we have our fingers crossed that those stay somewhat stable. But we have included those in our multi-years, and you'll see that it has helped us somewhat, but there's still just a tiny hint of caution that I'll talk about. So some future considerations as we're talking about our multi-years and as we're looking at next year's budget and moving forward. As I said, we are relying on COLA funding only as we move forward. That COLA is fluctuating. It's already changed twice, and we've already been told that it will probably change again for the May revise. The economy is kind of in a flux state right now, so we're watching that closely. We'll be talking a little bit later tonight about iReady, so that will have an impact. We are talking with different groups about textbook adoptions, instructional material costs. We have our next generation science standards and GSS coming up. We continue to have minimum wage adjustments that we are working towards. We have our program contributions. Another thing that we are kind of waiting to hear, and actually there's a meeting tonight, we have pretty consistent up and down the state from our JPAs on insurance, pretty consistent word that all of our insurance is going to go much higher.
Oh.
As most of us know, with our homeowners insurance, it's pretty tough to keep your insurance, let alone keep it at a reasonable rate. So that could increase substantially, so we'll keep everybody posted. And then we will be talking about the later start times for middle and high schools, and then continue discussions about salary increases for all of our employee groups. Right. So some of the things that we have not included in this, because many reasons, and I've listed a couple of those here, some of them still need future discussions. The classified confidential early retirement incentive that the board approved in February, we're working with CSEA to identify a range of 10 to 15 positions that will maximize that savings. On the special ed side, They have proposed several funding changes. Several of those need either trailer bill language, they're contingent upon adoption, some reforms. So we're kind of watching for that until we actually get more clarification, and then we'll start including some of those dollars in the multi-years. There will also be some special education program increases. Our enrollment in our special ed is increasing, so there will be some staffing increases that go along with that. As I said, we'll be talking about iReady. We do not have that built into the budget now, so depending on the discussions and what we choose to do in the future, that will have a budget impact. Everybody's talking about the coronavirus. There's many costs associated with that, so we'll be watching to see what that impact truly is. On the election side, depending on which way we go with this, if we go to a by trustee area, we would have less voters, so that's less of a cost, rather than an at-large area where we're paying for every voter. So we'll have to see how that works out based on the demographer. We talked a little bit about the insurance increases. Our workers' compensation is probably going to go up as well. Our claims have continued to increase. So we will wait and see what that actually is. We're looking at 0 period at Mitchell. We do have some students, so we are looking at where those students reside and what the cost of transporting those students are. And then again, the early start times for transportation. So the reductions that we have already identified for the current year, we've listed them by group, just to make it a little easier to see. So we've got positions that we've reduced in the ESC, this building here, and in our management group. Most of those were for the full year. We had a couple of these that were mid-year, so we didn't realize the full cost, but next year we will have the full cost of all of those. FCEA had the early retirement incentive effective for this year, so those are indicated here. CSEA, we had a couple of positions out at the sites. And then we had our operating reductions for travel and conference. And then with the board's decision to suspend the retiree benefit contribution, that is also indicated in the multi-years now. For 2021, board took action in November. These positions, both for the ESC and our management group, those positions are listed here. Also, we had some reductions for FCEA, and we've listed those as well. And then also for our CSEA group, on our operating reduction side, we had talked about sweeping our department carryovers, site carryovers, reducing some of our software costs. As we've been meeting with our different stakeholder groups and our last budget study session, we are going to be doing a zero-based budget review of all of our departments. I'm not sure we'll be able to do a full-on review, but we are going to do some.
Thank you.
So it'll be a pilot of sorts, but we have already started that. So we will be working our way through that. We will also be reviewing our formula allocations. We bring our budget guidelines to the board annually. So we're going to be looking at those again and then making some recommendations for the board, probably maybe April. Also, we have been meeting with both FCEA and CSEA. We are looking at all of our expenditures in what we call our object code 4000s and 5000s. That's books, supplies, operating, all of those types of expenses. So we're going to be doing a little bit more of a deep dive to see, if there's further reductions that we can make there. This was a suggestion yesterday from our CSEA group. We have a joint powers purchasing group where we have all districts participate, and we band together with vendors, and we have basically a price list. So, we're going to review that again just to make sure that we are up to date. We're going to make sure that there's nothing missing, and maybe review some of those things on there again. And then we will be reviewing instructional material purchases. I know there are several groups that will be working with Dr. Hoover, and we'll be looking at that as well. With our different stakeholders, these ideas were presented over the last 6 study sessions. So we've compiled it by groups, and we're going to start stakeholder focus type groups so that they can look at ideas that really pertain to their groups rather than trying to look at all things for the entire district. So we started talking with both of our groups this week. So this was the list that we presented to FCEA, and we will be talking further with them. These are ideas that we have brought to the board in the past. So these are just continued discussions. And then we've done the same thing with our CSEA group. These are ideas that have come through those study sessions, and then we will also be having discussions with them as well. On a bright side, though, we had our groundbreaking for Mangini Ranch. We are scheduled to open in 21-22. We currently have 110 students in that development area. 66 of those are elementary students. So we're getting closer. We're not close enough to the 250 mark, but they are building fast. So we are continuing to monitor that. When that school is opened, I've listed the staffing projections. This is estimated staffing for what we would need to open that school, along with all the different supplies, the support systems. We're going to need buses and drivers, and we'll need some musical instruments. So that's just kind of what we're planning on for that opening. So in the multi-year projection, so the first column is 1920. And that shows the revenue and expenditures, and it shows our designations that we have basically set aside. So the result of all of that is we have a 0 unassigned unappropriated balance. And you'll see if I can make this work. No, I can't make it work. Oh, hang on. Oh, there we go. I'm not technology driven tonight. Okay, so you'll see on the set aside line, we have set asides for 2021 and 21-22. We have set aside currently a little over $8 million. That $8 million is going to help us for the next 2 years. So you'll see as we go across, it decreases from 8 million to 5 million to 0. So you'll see it's dropping as we're using it. So that's really, it's not helping the structural deficit, but it's helping mitigate that until we can decide and get some more reductions approved. It's keeping us afloat. We are, with the change in COLA, we are showing a little bit of a fund balance in 2021 and in 21-22. That is contingent on that COLA and our ADA and lots of different things that we talked about on those previous slides. But for now, this is what we think is going to happen. There's still lots of unknowns for that third year. When we get to adopted budget, we will have a new third year, which will be 22-23. All of those set asides will be gone though. So what that means is we basically kicked the can down the road a little bit. So we are going to have an even bigger deficit in 22-23. But this will give us a little bit extra time to work towards that and work on that compounding that we've been talking about. The earlier we start with reductions, that they compound on themselves each year, and that gives us a little bit of extra time to compile some of those dollars. So what we've tried to do here is just show how it rolls from year to year. So you'll see the ending balance rolls to the beginning balance in next year and so forth. And then the same thing with expenditures and then the reductions that we've identified in 2021.
We have a little bit of a head start because we haven't included the classified positions that we're going to fill, not going to fill. So we have a little bit of a head start.
Yes, that's correct. Yes. Yeah, we still have a few things that we have not included that hopefully will give us even additional funding.
Quick question, deficit spending. What percentage are we at? 20, 15, 10? What's our goal to reduce?
Ooh, percentage-wise?
Yeah, we usually, it's a line, a linear line that you usually come up with.
I can't tell you off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, maybe.
I know it's increasing.
So if we can get at least.
But I can get you that.
Okay,
yeah.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, and you can see here, when you look at the revenue line and the expenditure line, you can see that the expenditures are, they're getting larger as opposed to the revenue. And in 2021, you'll see a slight dip in revenue, and that's because of those one-time dollars that we had in 1920 no longer we have in 2021. Okay. These are our other funds that we have multi-year projections for. Several are self-supporting. Our adult education program, child development, and food services, student care are all self-supporting. So they're making money. They are able to meet their expenses. Our deferred maintenance, we are coordinating with our bond projects. We still have mostly projects in G. We have a little bit left on M. We have some smaller projects on Measure P side. The developer fees will increase as we are building south of 50. And then our retiree benefit trust will become the irrevocable trust, and we'll have different reporting on that. What's next? So we have a timeline for the next several months. Adopted budget and our LCAP will be in June. So we have a little over 3 months to get ready for that, and it will be here very quick. So this month we have our stakeholder forums for our LCAP. We are starting budget development now. We have already started our stakeholder meetings on our budget. In April, we will have our P2ADA report. And then in May, we'll have the governors may revise a draft of the LCAP, and then we'll be back here with a third interim.
All right.
I asked mine through the presentation. Thank you.
Mr. Mr. Hoover, any questions?
Not at the moment.
Mr. Reed?
No.
None?
No.
All right. No questions on my end. Rhonda, thank you so much for that presentation. We'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
How about anyone from the public?
No, anybody from the public. I didn't see anybody like waving their hands or anything. Anybody from the public?
I'll move it, and thank you, Ms. Crawford.
Second. Thank you.
All right.
Awesome.
Moved by Ms. Ranking, second by Mr. Short. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Student board?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Item 13C, approve resolution number 03122030, Schools and Communities First Funding Act. Superintendent?
Yes, this information is coming back to the board based upon a request that we received from Mary McNulty from CTA for our board to consider passing a resolution to add to the petition and hopefully get this initiative on to the ballot in November, which would reclaim over $12 billion every year for our schools and local communities. So it's here before you this evening and for your action.
Any comments from the board?
Yes.
Yeah, we've been looking at this for a long time at CSBA, and CSBA endorses it. And, Prop 13's always been out there for the resident. This one doesn't change the residential thing for elderlies or people that are frozen. But when you read into this, there's only a few corporate properties that hold the majority of the revenue on this. But so commercial properties have been kind of not really paying their fair share. Businesses and stuff do benefit from the education system, schools and everything, the workforce, anything going out there. So this, to me, I will support it because it will help some of our unfair funding processes that we have right now at Prop 98. And as you read it, actually will probably get us back where we need to be in Prop 98 and a little bit more. So I think this is, I am in support for it.
Ms. Ranky?
Well, I love the idea. I feel this is premature. I didn't expect it to come back so quickly, especially after last week's election where we saw what happened with some of the education issues that were on the ballot. So right now, I'm at a place where I think it's a little early, and I'd want to take time to learn more, see where we're going. If I had caught it earlier, I would have asked, why are we doing this so soon? I just think it's too early that our community has... Based on the results from the last election, this is something that people aren't ready to support right now. So I want to see where it goes, and that's where I am right now. I just think it's premature. That's all.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. If this isn't going on November's ballot, is
Yeah,
it?
yes, they're trying to acquire signatures for November's ballot. They're not, this is the presentation we got last
Right.
meeting. Yeah.
I'm
Well, I love the concept. I'm concerned about some of the language in it and some of the, based on the results last week, I want to wait a little bit. That's just my opinion.
Obviously, all right, let me browse through this real quick. Mr. Hoover?
Okay. Yeah, I also have concerns. I won't be supporting it tonight, nor will I support it in the future. I think this is a very problematic proposal, and I think it would be short-sighted to support this as a board as well. So, first of all, just going through some of the language of this proposition, it fixes a loophole in Prop 13. That's not the case. Prop 13 was written this way specifically and by design. In fact, property taxes are one of the only areas of taxation that California does not lead the nation. We have a $21 billion budget surplus in the state of California. Our state spending has grown by $60 billion since 2011. Half of that growth has gone to education. The problem is not that taxes are too low. The problem is that our state views the Prop 98 guarantee as a ceiling and not a floor. I think our state does need to do a better job of prioritizing their budget to fund education. I don't believe that the answer is going to taxpayers for even more money. Secondly, there's this point that this proposition will somehow only affect the wealthy. That's either the proponents of the measure don't understand how the economy works, or they're choosing to intentionally mislead the public, because when you raise costs on businesses, those costs get passed down to consumers. It's that simple. And if anything, this proposition is going to have the hardest impact on low-income communities and seniors on fixed incomes, because when prices go up, those communities are the communities that get hit the hardest. So I personally am not willing to support something that will financially harm the very people that we represent and that we claim we care about. Our state is currently facing an affordability crisis. We have rising housing costs, healthcare expenses, taxes, food prices. Gas is the highest in the nation. Our college tuition prices continue to go up. It's becoming increasingly harder to raise a family and support a family in California. So the high cost of living, in fact, is one of the main reasons that people are choosing to leave the state. And in 2019, we had the first negative net migration from California for the first time since 2010. In my opinion, humbly, I think that policies like the Schools and Community First Initiative will further contribute to these growing problems. I know that we heard last meeting a lot of the people that support this. I want to point out a few of the people that oppose it. The California Small Business Association and the National Federation of Independent Business. Those are two groups that represent small business owners, not large corporations. Multiple taxpayers associations oppose this bill, as well as NAACP chapters, local chambers of commerce, and many more. So I would really encourage my colleagues tonight, and at this meeting and at future meetings, to reject supporting this measure. This is not the answer to solve our education problem and funding issues in California. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Reed?
Well, I'm a strong supporter of trying to find additional revenue to go to our public schools in California. When you look at the per student spending in California, and you see it measured at elementary, you see it measured at middle and high school, and they're different numbers, but they're all, if you average them together, it's approximately $9,500 per student. And then you look at other states, like New York State, that spends approximately $17,000 per student. And you look at California being the 5th largest economy in the world. How come California prioritizes their students at $9,500 per student, And New York prioritizes their students at $17,000 per student. This is a government-created problem by the state legislature, and the state legislature needs to solve it. I would agree with my colleague, Mr. Hoover, that it's an issue of priorities. We can't be everything to everybody, and the state legislature needs to learn that. Spending $20 billion on a high-speed rail and having a failing public school system is not a sound solution for the future of our state. I am personally open to some future proposition that would create guaranteed funding that would get California up to the top 5 states in the country on per student spending. But I just don't see this as the solution to accomplish that. And again, I think part of the solution has to come from the state legislature and redirecting their priorities to our students. But I'd be open to a formal vote on this, but not tonight. In that I would like to see a representative of the taxpayers, one of the taxpayer groups, to come in and do a counter proposal. I'd like to see the two sides. I'd like to see a proponent speak on favor of this, and a person representing a taxpayer organization speaking why we should oppose it. And once we have that, I would be open to a formal vote, although I just don't personally see myself supporting this particular proposal.
Ms. Ranking?
I just wanted to add to a couple of things my colleague said. And part of our problem is that the governor's proposed budget has a lot of his special interests in there. So if he were to just give that money back to the local districts and allow us to use that the way that we see best to use it, we would have more leeway in our budget. Yeah. And, we're trying, that's just my opinion on his proposal. So thank you.
All right, Mr. Short?
50% of the state's budget is K through 14. Prop 13, the bulk of the taxes come from certain general fund from the state, right? So this has been going on for a long time. The commercial properties that it does exclude the residential, excludes agriculture, it excludes all the small businesses. If you really look into this, there's only a few corporations that hold the mass of the land here in California that pay most of it. It's not going to be the small businesses that produce maybe 60 to 80% of our jobs, and most of them. It's not the big corporation, not the big landowners. This is just the land taxed on it. So we're going to have to, on the Prop 98, yes, it was not considered as a ceiling, but all the governors in the last 2 times and the legislatures just totally negated the voters thing on 98, and they've been underfunding for 98 for a long time. Even last Governor Brown, when he exited, he had his whole plan to when he exit to have it all back. It's every new governor comes in with some type of thing, and then they never honor the Prop 98, and it will never be. But there has to be another mechanism to do that, and this is right here. Like you said, corporations and businesses have to have their fair share of paying into what they benefit from, which is our education system. We educate the future workforce. They are helping pay for that, and that seems to be appropriate. CSBA has done a lot of analysis on this. It's not going to go on the ballot. It's just looking for signatures. It's going for 2020 because of the conflict. The things that happened on this last thing, it happened to do with the overtaxing or anything. It had to do with the mistrust of the governor and everybody else, how they restream the bullet. You do a tax on the gas tax, and then they redirect the money for green building stuff and all kinds of stuff and housing. They take a voter, and then so that's the mistrust that's in. We're thinking with the legislators and the governor right now. So in 2 years from now, hopefully that public trust comes back, that the tax monies that you do go to their appropriate places. I think that's where we had the fallout, was that type of thing. So I'm going to be in support of this, and I would encourage the board to really look into this. And I'm a CSBA delegate. We all should be proposing to help our kids.
Mr. I just need to clarify. What we are discussing right now is the CTA bill. The CSBA initiative is not being considered for 2020. And this is not a bill, this is not being considered for 2022. We are talking about the CTA one. So it is not, it has nothing to do with CSBA. I just want to clarify that. The presentation we got last meeting from the CTA rep, they are the ones supporting this. I think if you listen to the discussion, we had two board members say we want to learn more. Mr. Reed is open to hearing more information. Mr. Hoover made his point. I would recommend that maybe we table this for a little bit and not take a vote tonight, and the chance that in the future we may want to revisit this. So my recommendation would be to bring this back at a later date.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, that's not bad. The question I have is, do we have a timetable to do this resolution? Is there a timetable in place that we actually need to have this by? Would anybody know that?
I'm sorry, what?
A timetable for this to actually have...
They're still collecting signatures, I
Are they?
believe. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Why don't we wait till we know that they're going to be on the ballot,
Right.
and then we'll have.
That would be my
plenty
suggestion
of, yeah.
as well. I kind of agree with Mr. Reed about having both sides come in and present. I'd be interested to hear what the other side was talking about. And, you know, you talk about full and fair funding. Yeah, there is an issue when we are the 5th largest economy in the world, and we're ranked 39 in per pupil funding. I mean, how does that figure? So I would like to table it. Have the opportunity for both groups to come in and possibly, you know, give a small presentation on each side before the board sits down, takes a look at it, and considers it. So I'm good for tabling this.
I'd be open to that, and I'm happy to vote no on it at any point in the future.
Thanks for that confidence there. All right. All right.
I think it's good to get more information because a lot of it's still in the gray area with everybody endorsing it.
Absolutely. All right.
Good
So
idea.
we'll bring that puppy back. All right. Item 14, discussion item. 14A, iReady presentation. Superintendent?
Yes. I want to thank those teachers that were here at the last meeting when we had this on the agenda, and thank you for coming back, and those that might be viewing via live stream. But I also want to thank Dr. Huber and the leadership of our lead teachers and those that worked with him in putting this information together. As we consider how we use a tool for formative and summative assessment going forward, we thought it was important to bring this information to the board and have those discussions before, you know, we make that decision, and it would be part of a budget assumption going forward too. As Rhonda said, it's not in the budget yet. So
Right.
there are many things to consider, and I want to turn it over to Dr. Huber to share some of those highlights.
Good evening. So me and the team put this together kind of in two parts. So I'm going to go through basically an overview that kind of shows you how did we get to where we are. And then I do have two team members still from last time. And so Amy Kraft and Pam Oyen will then come up and join me in terms of any questions that you might want to ask after the presentation. So 5 years ago, the district purchased iReady, and you can see kind of the thinking behind that purchase at the time. We were looking for a district-wide consistent assessment that would, no matter what school you were going to, elementary, middle school, et cetera, that all students were being assessed in the exact same way to really give us some strong data points in terms of our students' literacy and math, and especially in terms of where they started and then what was the growth throughout the year. The data points also from iReady help us with our multiple measures, because it is standards-based. It is connected to the Common Core. It's curriculum agnostic, meaning it doesn't matter what curriculums districts are using. The assessments will assess students no matter the curriculum. And then it's adaptive, and that's one of the things that's really unique about it, is it does adapt as students grow. And so it really gives us timely snapshots of where students are at in their learning and in their progress. It's also our only way in terms of monitoring, in terms of, is there equitable grade level learning for all students? How are students progressing throughout the district? So just going to give you a snapshot of kind of how this is used both at the elementary level and the secondary level. And you're going to see a lot of things that are repeated. So in elementary, at the district level, we use iReady for 3 diagnostics a year, the very beginning of the year, halfway through, and the end of the year. This measures both the starting point of students and then their growth throughout the year. We also, at a district level, use that in terms of EL reclassification. Obviously, Ms. Cabrera could tell more about that, but she's not here this evening, but we'll do our best. The sites also use that information in terms of their data walks, in terms of PLC work, RTI work. They also use the data to inform both interventions for students that are struggling, but also if a student's at grade level and needs some extension. All of our elementary schools engage in what's called Every Child by Name. This data is used in those meetings. And then finally, the data is also used in IEPs, SSTs, etc. And then all the way down to the classroom at the elementary level, the assessments obviously are used in terms of where students are at with their literacy levels and their math levels, but also the curriculum is used to differentiate in the classroom. So if you go into a lot of our elementary school classrooms, they're using the curriculum for small group work. A lot of times you can go in a classroom and you might see groups of 3 or 4 kids in different areas of the classroom doing different things. One of those stations almost always is an iReady lesson, either in ELA or mathematics, which just it's one more tool that the teacher can use as he or she is working that classroom, and kids are working on different levels of materials depending on where they are. Also, it's one of our most important tools at the elementary level to really understand students' literacy lexile levels, which old assessments were very time consuming on the part of teachers to determine what a student's literacy lexile was. At secondary, a little bit different, and we're still kind of fine tuning this. Right now, there's only one required diagnostic for the secondary, and that's used at the very beginning of the year to kind of get a baseline. So that's what actually is prescribed, if you will, by the district, that all of our secondary schools use one required diagnostic at the beginning. A lot of the secondary schools also do a diagnostic mid-year, and that diagnostic mid-year especially is for students if they want to decide if the student needs to be either placed in or taken out of a remediation class or a support class and be put into a regular grade level class. Again, we use it for reclassification. It's one of the multiple measures that allows us to do that. And then also iReady does meet the requirement by the state that requires us to test all 9th grade students in terms of where they are with their mathematics so that they are placed in the correct mathematics class. In terms of the site, again, we're back to the data is used for the PLC work. It's used for RTI work, again, to inform whether or not we need to intervene or whether or not we need to extend. Also, they, again, use it for course placement. It's also used for WASC, for WASC data, as well as IEPs and SSTs. Finally, at the middle schools, in terms of use in advisory classes or places like that, the curriculum is used for differentiating the instruction again, or for remediation. And a few of the high schools also, maybe in some of our special education classrooms or other specialized classes, you also still might see the curriculum being used, but it's not used near as much at the high school level as anywhere else. And then finally, it's used for remediation. So we also took a survey of our staff and our students or administrators just to get kind of a snapshot of their reactions also. Not sure why the slide did that, but you kind of can get the information there. We had over 6,500 students respond. 470 staff members responded. We're not going to go through all the data. There's quite a bit there. So we did include a link so you can dive straight into the raw data. We're just going to pull out some highlights for you this evening. So in terms of the staff, elementary staff, as we said earlier, are much more likely to use the curriculum and the assessments than high school or middle school staff are. And then elementary staff also, and site administration, are likely to use iReady data more frequently than middle school and high school. You'll see that too in another graph we're going to share with you. Over 2/3 of site admin agreed iReady assessments are critical to supporting student data needs in order to create interventions and track students' academic growth, and that iReady instruction leads to student academic growth. This was especially true from some of the respondents from middle school. Over half of elementary staff agreed that using iReady instruction leads to student academic growth, and iReady assessments are critical to supporting student data needs. Again, we're back to that, really trying to dive into the data as to what students need in terms of our IT or RTI and MTSS work. These are two scales, that graphs, just to give you a little bit of idea. It kind of highlights what we were talking about a minute ago in terms of the student data. So the scale is 0 to 10 in terms of the prompt is using iReady lessons have helped me improve at school. And as you can see, the high school's enthusiasm, the secondary school's enthusiasm is nowhere near the elementary school's enthusiasm. Also, almost identical is the graph in terms of the question, in terms of the iReady assessments and have they helped you improve in school. And you can see, again, almost identical chart. The only caveat I'd like to say with this is we've never really surveyed any students and said, hey, how do you like StudySync? Or how do you like math big ideas? Or how do you like any assessment or curriculum that students have to go through? I can tell you there's an old joke in terms of curriculum that first day of school and the teacher hands out the textbook, watch what happens. It's like offering garlic to a vampire. Almost every student leans away in terms of the materials. It's just, part of the experience, if you will. So I'm not sure if we would have saw different results with any of the materials that were used. This is just a quick snapshot in terms of how often, how the iReady programs are used. So the graph on the very left is the assessment and diagnostic. So those are school sites that are using both the assessments assessments only. The middle column is they're using both the curriculum and the assessments, and obviously you can see their elementary is higher, but the site admin also pays attention to a lot of that data. And then curriculum only, or I don't use iReady. So. And then frequently, you can see that for the most part, the use pretty much falls into either two to three times a week over to 1-3 times a year. And obviously the 1-3 times per year for middle and high school is because of the way the program is used in terms of placement, that very first use at the beginning of the year, and then some of those schools using iReady at the end of the first semester to decide if they're going to make changes in placement. Finally, we asked iReady for a couple different quotes in terms of using their product. And so we have quotes for one-year options and 3-year options. So option 1 and option 2 are both for assessment only. So if we only bought iReady to use their assessments K-12, then the 1-year cost is $130,000, and the 3-year cost, is $368,000. Option 3 and 4 is using 3-year. I think I just messed that up. I apologize. So option 1 is the 1-year quote. Option 2 is the 3-year quote. And then option 3 does include the online curriculum for elementary. So it would go through 5th grade. Our elementary school still would have access to the online curriculum. And then K through 12th would have access to the diagnostic. Just also so you know, the high school is basically in there free of charge, if you will. They're only charging us through up to 5th grade for the diagnostic. The 1-year price for that is $383,000, and then the 3-year price is just over $1 million. The 3-year options on either one can also be paid over the course of 2 years. So that is the kind of overall presentation in terms of iReady and how we ended up here with iReady and why we bought it. And so now I'd like to invite Pam and Amy up, and we'll just take any questions that you have. Okay. Yeah.
Out of these options, which one do the teachers really want? It sounds, because you talk high frequency. And number 2, the online curriculum, would that also be able to use for remote learning as if we had to close our schools for coronavirus?
So let me answer the first one, and then I'll ask Pam to answer the second one. So for the most part, especially elementary teachers that I heard from repeatedly, and I know if Mr. Wilson here is, he would agree with this, definitely want the assessment and the curriculum, because it is really important in terms of differentiated instruction at the elementary level. Also, it is one of the only things that we have at the elementary level to supplement math. And so if students are struggling with mathematics at the elementary level, there really is no other intervention or support in mathematics than iReady. And then in terms of distance
online as distance learning, yeah.
We definitely have students who use iReady at home regularly over the school year. And in the summer, it's a big request from our elementary staff and parents and students. We continue to allow students to access iReady at home during the summer until we get to the point where we have to roll our programs for the new school year. So we have students using it well into early July when we have to cut off access to be able to get the new school year set up.
And it can be used in an emergency situation also. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Hoover?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, a lot of the concerns I've heard are probably some of the same ones that you've heard. Actually, talking to some of the students at the last board meeting, One of the concerns that was raised is that the product is too repetitive and redundant, and it's easy to memorize, and issues like that. So I'd be interested in seeing or hearing kind of what you've heard on that, and if there's any way to fix that issue.
So there's a couple of things. We tend to hear that more as you go up the grade levels. And so, but especially by the time you start getting a 7th and 8th and in the high school, you hear more of that concern in terms of curriculum. iReady is working on revising the curriculum, especially at the middle school and high school. In fact, part of this offer that they said, if we wanted to, they would be willing to let us pilot the new program at 2 of our middle schools. That came after this whole presentation was created, that offer, so that's why it wasn't included in there. But they are actually looking at revising the secondary curriculum for 6th through 8th grade. In terms of the repetitiveness, that speaks more to the fact that that's the way students are assessed to figure out exactly what points of growth the student is exhibiting. And so, would you like to speak more to that, Amy, in terms of, just because you're more familiar with the actual assessment than I am, in terms of how the assessment actually works? Tony, you want to speak to that? I can speak to that. Okay, Tony.
Hey, everybody. Tony Ruiz, Vista Del Lago. Yeah. I can't speak to elementary. I can't speak to middle. I can't speak to high school. And I've taught 9 through 12 at Vista. And the thing that happens every time is when these assessments come out, when we get to that diagnostic, now it's great they're saying they're updating the curriculum. I want to know if they're updating the diagnostic, because the diagnostic is what we use. We don't use the curriculum, we use the diagnostic. And it's the same exact diagnostic every single time. The same passages, the same questions, to the point that the vast majority of my students, and I could probably go to work tomorrow and they'd be able to tell me exactly what's the first passage about, what's the second passage about. They know it. So it's not an authentic measure of that, of their actual skills. It becomes a, oh yeah, I remember I clicked C for this one. Oh, I remember I clicked. It's not assessing their skills, it's assessing their memory. So if they're updating the curriculum, great, but I want to see them kind of update that diagnostic, because it doesn't really do us any good in terms of, and particularly, I also, my heart is teaching my intervention class, my ILET class. That's my heart. And I would really love to be able to get authentic data on those kids, but the problem is that I can't, because I don't have that kind of authentic assessment of their skills.
In regard to that too, that was actually one of the reasons that a lot of the schools went to once a year at the high school level because of that. I think also in conversations with iReady, I can't speak to exactly where they are in their assessments and whether or not there's any changes to that, but I think that might have been one of the reasons why high school wasn't included in any kind of cost. It was simply, well, we'll let you just continue using the high school, the assessments at the high school level. I can certainly find out what the plans are. I heard more about the curriculum because the concerns tend to be more about the curriculum. And I know that that's what they're really focusing on at the secondary level, but I can certainly make inquiries in terms of what the assessments will look like down the road in the high school level. Either one of you want to speak more to that in terms of the assessments?
Just the comment on the assessments is one of the distinctions between the iReady assessment and the curriculum assessments that we have is that it has the adaptive piece, where the students start off with questions, and then based on how they answer the question, it branches off into tougher questions, and it's constantly adjusting as they're going through. So whereas in a curriculum assessment, we can have a good assessment around the standards that we're taught, but it doesn't let us see any further past that. With the iReady assessment, it kind of gives us a different level of information, because it's letting the student kind of go as far as they can, so we can see where those students really are and not just around a certain set of standards.
Okay. I'm going to save you for last.
Hey, I'm going to turn the mic over to Mr. Reed. But,
yeah.
But I did... One quick question. I don't know if it's quick, but has the district looked into alternatives? I mean, is this something that... I mean, I assume iReady's not the only provider of a tool like this, but...
No, it's not. And we could look at other alternatives. There's two concerns about that. When we went with iReady 5 years ago, and in terms of just kind of casual glance right now, a lot of the companies are very close to each other in terms of the price point. And so they're very similar. And one of the things our district I don't want to say suffers from, but it's a concern of a lot of teachers, is one more new thing to learn and to have to implement and have to go to training for, et cetera. And so iReady is something that, the teachers are very comfortable with. It's something they know very well, and it's not something that they'd have to put any time into in terms of relearning. So while we could definitely look at other products, that's a concern. And one of the things we got a lot of feedback on over the last 2 years was the next new thing that the district's going to get us involved in. So it's just something to consider in that regard. I don't know of any company that does what iReady does that is significantly less expensive than that. But at the same time, we haven't put things out to bid either in terms of the 5-year process or a 3-year process. Just kind of the way things came around, that hasn't been done yet. So maybe that's something to consider in terms of, do we look at doing something for 1 year so that we still have the program, and then we spend next year as part of the process of going to other companies and seeing what they offer. But I do want to stress that that implementation fatigue is real in our district.
Right.
So it's something really to consider.
Well, and I'll yield my time, but as I'm not overly impressed with iReady as a parent, and I think that I'd be up for a similar product at a similar price if it's more effective. But I'll end there.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save Mr. Reed for last, but I'm going to start with our student board member because she had a couple of comments.
Yeah, so at the middle and high school level, a big concern that many students have is that we never actually get to see our scores. I've been taking this for many years, and I've actually never known what score I get, and a lot of students are curious to know that. They don't know where to check or who to ask.
Right, and I would say that's one of the kind of the learning curves for our whole district and a lot of our teachers. We do have 2 schools that this last year really kind of stepped up sharing the data, and with some pretty marked effects in terms of students' reaction to it, and then also just the students' understanding of why it's important to try, to invest the time and really put forth your best effort. So White Rock stands out particularly, and Mitchell as well, in terms of 2 schools that really started building in the data to their advisory programs, or just in terms of White Rock, helping students understand this is what the data shows right now, and then at the next assessment, look at where you've grown, or look at where we still have to work in terms of helping you get better, but making the students really a part of the data conversation and helping them understand their data. I think this is an area that we really need to focus on and grow more as a district, is that oftentimes students are not having the data shared with them, and so it does not mean as much to them, or they just wonder, what is this for? So it's a great point.
And my next thing, it's more of a comment than a question, but kind of going along with the fact of the repetitiveness and redundance of the program. Oftentimes when students are taking it, you get these passages and it's like 4 or 5 lines, and then you have to go, there's 5 pages, and you go, and then you're asked questions and you keep having to go back and forth. And for some students, it's much more helpful to just have the entire passage in front of you and be able to read it or annotate as you'd like. So that's another thing. Students get frustrated, and sometimes we're doing 5 or 6 passages, and this is more with the curriculum and how the program works. But you get tired after the 2nd or 3rd passage of going back and forth and trying to remember what the first page said, and then you're in a testing environment, so that's stressful as well. So that's another.
Well, that's feedback we can certainly share.
Thank you, Scarlett. Ms. Ranking?
And I just want to concur with the concerns about changing and not having anything in the interim if we do decide to change, but also the fatigue of having to learn something new and the cost associated with that. But so I have concerns about making a switch. But I think a lot of the complaints I hear about revolve around overuse of it, whether in the classroom or if the student is required to use it at home. And also the second part of that is using it perhaps in kindergarten and maybe even 1st grade, and maybe overuse of it at those levels. So those are some of the concerns that I'm hearing, and how do we address that classroom management or the use of it?
Those are all things that we continue to need professional development around, and conversations with our principals and our teachers in terms of how is the program being used. And I agree that we are starting to have conversations in terms of how much any computer systems are good for our kindergartners and our 1st graders especially. And so I think that's an ongoing discussion in terms of, maybe that should be dialed back a little bit so that we haven't already built in screen fatigue by the time they get to 1st grade or 2nd grade.
Mr. Short?
Two questions. I'm with also on the implementation fatigue. I know how that is. If you could, work with iReady to enhancements and maybe, like you said, doing beta versions and they throw it in, making some of these changes, maybe that'd be more effective and better time spent. So I'm more for trying to improve what we've got and then trying to replace, because that's disruptive. But the other question is, I noticed that it also used for your IEPs. And what's the data behind that? And that's pretty essential, I guess, for our special education and our kids for our IEPs. How are they using that during the IEP process? Are they using that information as available for them when they're doing IEPs?
It's again one more of our multiple measures. So it's just another data point that the teacher or the case manager can use when sitting in an IEP with the parents and the students to show. Definitely in an IEP, that you would be seeing the data in terms of where the student is currently, what areas they may be struggling in, where there's been significant growth. So all those factors could be shared out in an IEP in terms of the student's individual data.
Right, and the student sees it there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
this again is
it's addressing why can't anybody else
right.
see
Well,
it too.
it's kind of dependent on the case manager.
Right,
so again,
right.
I think it's something that could be used more fully in an IEP, and it's in our use of data. It's one of the things we're focusing on as a district, and this is only one aspect of it. But as a district, we're trying to get better in terms of how we use data, and that's everything from the district level all the way down to the classroom level and the individual student. So it's all part of the same process of us improving how we're using data.
Data-driven decisions.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And Mr. Reed.
Thank you. The Reed family has been living through iReady from elementary school through high school. And I've heard an earful over the years, not only from my own children, but many, many children of my friends on the program. And while I would say as a curriculum and diagnostic tool, there's merit in elementary school, I have heard no source of the merit using the diagnostic tool in a middle school and high school. If you look at the student responses, the single word that is used more often than any other word of the students is the word boring. If it was an issue about the students didn't like the diagnostic tool, might be, I would give it perhaps a little bit more merit if the word that they used was hard or challenging or something along those lines. But when the word is boring, it would seem to suggest that it's not serving the purpose that we're using the diagnostic tool for, especially when you look at that graph in the grades 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. My son actually showed me a video on YouTube of the brain exercise that they're forced to go through while taking tests in high school, where they have a cartoon character show up with a blue balloon next to them and doing these breathing exercises with a picture of your brain with a frowny face turning into a happy face, that they can't continue on with the testing until they go through this video. And while I appreciate what they're trying to teach, using Dora the Explorer type cartoons with high schoolers is, I don't know if I can find the right word to describe it. We need to treat our kids with age-appropriate education material. And using cartoons in middle school and high school is not age-appropriate criteria. And to reiterate the comments made by Tony, I've heard from multiple students that they don't even read the passages. It's the same passages that they've read in middle school, the same passages in high school. They immediately go to the questions. Why is that a good diagnostic tool? Are we having a diagnostic tool just to say we have a diagnostic tool? And I'm very concerned that we're letting technology take over the classroom and replace the role of the teacher. The teacher is the diagnostician in the classroom, not a computerized program. And we are, and I'm concerned about the future of public education if we keep on relying on these computerized programs for the future education of our kids. Now, again, I think there could be some benefits in elementary school, but I would also highlight, in looking through the data that you have included in the surveys, I will go to the teacher data. There were several teachers that obviously they didn't identify their names, but you could tell what grades they were teaching. And I could definitely pick out a handful of kindergarten teachers who basically said this program is a waste of time in kindergarten. I would personally love to see kindergarten be treated as a technology-free zone where we don't use or introduce the Chromebooks or any other technology to our kids, and use kindergarten as an opportunity for what it should be, which is hands-on learning, because that's what the kids need at that grade level. I would actually like to see that in kindergarten, first grade, because I think the point where technology starts to become important is around second grade, because the first testing that occurs is in third grade and it's done on a computer. So the kids in third grade need to be comfortable with the technology that we have, but we don't need to be introducing that technology in kindergarten, and I would argue maybe even first grade. And when we're looking for ways to create savings as we go into the budget crisis or budget issues where we have to make cuts, think of the savings we could have if we had no Chromebooks in any of the kindergarten or first grade classrooms, because we don't use it. We rely on the teachers and the teachers' professional skills. The teachers went and got master's degrees and doctorate degrees. We need to entrust the teachers to use their professional skills and stop relying on technology so much. Now, I'm not anti-technology, but we need to find the right balance. Unfortunately, as a society, we tend to go to extremes. We all of a sudden, and I saw it happen about 6-7 years ago. We're like, oh, we got to go to technology, and we went from basically shared technology being in the library in the computer classrooms all the way to everybody has a Chromebook. That's two different extremes. And we keep on, as a society, going over the center part, which is moderation. We need to try to learn moderation in all parts of our society, and that includes education. So that is my concern. And I guess the question, and I guess I do have a question here, is it state mandated that there be a computerized diagnostic tool in grades 6 through 12? Or are we using this as a diagnostic tool because it's easy to say and check the box to say we are relying on this as a diagnostic tool?
So it's not required to have a diagnostic tool except for things like reclassification of students, the 9th grade math assessment. And that's what you're in right now is growing pains also for us, because this is the first time we've had anything that's somewhat like this. And one of the questions that we're asked all the time, and one of the primary questions of PLC work, is how do we know the students know it? And so all your concerns that you just brought up are conversations we are constantly having. And I can tell you that the conversation around screen time and whether or not it's appropriate for kindergarten, first grade, second grade are conversations that we are currently involved with at our school sites, between teachers. It's something that Mr. Wilson's brought up several times. And a lot of that is coming from the experience over the last 5 years in terms of using these assessments and finding out where they're working and where they're not. But there are requirements in terms of, like, with our EL students, to reclassify them. We can't just give them an assessment that I, as a teacher, an English teacher, created and give it to them to assess how they're doing in their English language development. We have to give them an assessment that compares them to like peers on a normed assessment. even with the professionalism you're talking about, teachers oftentimes have different ideas about what should be assessed or how something should be assessed. And so there's extreme differences. You can go to a school site and sit in the same English department and pull 3 ninth grade teachers together, and you'll find differences in terms of how they're assessing, what they're assessing, to the depth that they're assessing. And so that's what this is about, in terms of, it's really the only tool that we have to try to see what kind of learning and what kind of growth is taking place over a school year. And so while it's certainly not perfect yet, we're working with, like right now, working with iReady, because we give them feedback as well. It's one of the aspects of why the curriculum is changing, and they're creating this pilot for middle school. But there's also feedback we're giving them in terms of their assessments. And their assessments are not piloted, are similar to what the assessment will be when the student sits down for the CASP. I mean, that's the correlation between iReady and CASP. They have a lot of data to show it's very similar. And so it tends to give a pretty good idea if the student's doing, at this level on iReady, probably that's what we're going to see in the CASP. Also, as you pointed out, since we don't test, we used to test in every year in every grade level, right? With the state assessments, that's changed. So we do a test all the way through 8th grade, but then there's no test at all until students get to the 11th grade in high school. So again, it's the only thing we have to give us some kind of indication of how kids are doing, growing over 9th and 10th grade as we get ready for that 11th grade assessment. So, I mean, I could go up and give you a hug for everything you just said, because philosophically, I'm right with you in terms of us figuring out what's right for kids. But it's been a process, and it's the first time our district has had something that is this consistent across the grade levels. Also, in terms of assessment, it can be really time consuming, or you can get into areas that teachers have no background in. My doctoral research was done on secondary literacy, and the reason I did it is because I can tell you, as a secondary English teacher, I had no idea how to teach literacy. I had no idea how to assess what level one of my students would. I could tell as a 9th grade teacher at Luther Burbank High School that all my kids were at the time in red, right? So when they took the state assessment, all my kids were down there in the red, far below basic. But it's like, I had no idea how to help them with their literacy. Where iReady, that's what it does, is it gives teachers this is the skill Jimmy is struggling with. These are the areas that Jimmy is struggling with, whether it's in math or literacy. And so it is a tool that we've never had before. Does it need refinement, and do we need to help them improve their product? Absolutely. But I think all the other ones, in terms of just, again, I haven't dove deep into comparing, so I don't want to give you that impression. But from what I have observed, everybody in the industry that's doing these kind of things are struggling with the same things. And that will get better over time.
The interesting thing about the diagnostic portion of the tool to be able to determine and assess a student's capabilities, the problem with iReady also, and I heard this from several teachers, is that while yes, it can give you in broad categories how Johnny or Jane is doing in a particular issue area, the teachers do not have the ability to look at an individual student's test to see the actual question that they got wrong. They do not know that. It's not a functionality of the program. And if the teacher can't go in and look at individualize the test to find out, well, why did Johnny or Jane have a problem on this specific question, it would be very helpful, I would think, for the teacher be able to focus in on helping the student achieve that skill set, rather than just generalize that they're struggling in a broad category. So that is another issue with iReady that I would point out. But I almost wonder, is there another option or multiple options we could consider, like asking iReady, gosh, how much would a 2nd through 5th grade diagnostic and online curriculum cost? And then maybe go to another, if we feel that we need to have a standardized tool, which maybe we do, maybe we don't, but go to another company that has a more age-appropriate product for our middle school and high school that doesn't make our kids feel like they're being treated like children in elementary school when they're in middle school and high school, and being subjected to this cartoon character and quite frankly, I've heard mind-numbing content. that the teachers freely admit is not a good diagnostic tool to begin with because of its limitations. So is that a potential option?
Yeah, do you want to answer with drilling down in terms of what teachers can see at all?
When the teachers are looking at data, it's really geared around the standards. So when the students are taking the test, the standards are being assessed multiple times. And so instead of giving the teacher like visibility into the question, it focuses on looking at how the student has done the multiple times they've touched that standard and giving them data around that standard.
In terms of your question, yeah, we could absolutely explore, a wide variety of things. In terms of the timing, I think I would probably recommend that we stay with iReady in its current form for this year to give us the amount of time to put this out to bid, to see other products. Also, there will be a part if we did that, if we said iReady will be our 2nd to 5th grade curriculum and assessment material, and then we're going to switch to something else for secondary, because we do need something that will allow us to measure all kids for, like I said, the 9th grade math piece, or if we need to reclassify an EL learner. So we have to have something. We would also have to have a decent amount of time to train teachers. Mm-hmm. So it'll require us pulling teachers out of classrooms again and bringing them to trainings, or iReady, I'm sure other companies do too, will go to the school site and sit down with teachers and assist them also. But you're talking about a significant amount of professional development that would have to go with that, which again, we can do. It will take time. So if the board would like us to explore that, we could do that, but I would recommend that we at least go with the 1-year option to give us the time to complete all that work, because it will be a little bit of a lengthy process.
And can I add the other option is work with iReady to make those changes and enhancements?
Oh yeah, like I said, we've shared all this feedback and more.
Okay, what do they say?
As all the companies, they continually are trying to refine their product.
Yeah, well then, if they know we're going to get rid of them, then they might do it.
Yeah, iReady's been pretty responsive, but I agree in terms of the fact that sometimes we wish things could go a little faster. So,
Dr. Hoover, when you say 1 year, are you looking at option 3 or option 1 would be the best one? Do we only need just the diagnostic, or would we need the online curriculum for the elementary?
I would say the online curriculum is definitely something that, so the combination. So basically it would be almost status quo for 1 year while we explored all the options.
But are we looking at option 3 K through 5, or as Mr. Reed was saying? Well, no, but what Mr. Reed
option 3A, what I would call.
Okay, the 2nd through 5.
Yeah, it's option 3. So it's 1 year K5. They have everything. They have the assessments and they have the curriculum. And then 6 through 12 have diagnostic.
But could option 3 be option 3A, where at the very least we drop kindergarten and say 1st through 5th grade diagnostic and online curriculum, and 6th to 12th grade diagnostic only? Do we need it in the kindergarten? Clearly, the teachers did not kindergarten teachers did not think that this was necessary. At least the ones you could identify on the.
Yeah, I mean, I would. Look to the superintendent and having a discussion with our teachers, but I don't see why we couldn't go to, I'm not sure what the difference in price would be, but I could certainly find out if
I honestly think there won't be a difference in the price. It's just going to be a package, whether we use the first, the K and 1st grade, it's up to us.
I agree. I think because they went as bare bones. This was back and forth. I don't know how many times they went about as bare bones as they could go. So I don't think the price would change. Right. But I still think that we could still engage in that conversation with whatever they've given us, which we've decided. We don't have to do anything in kindergarten or 1st grade. And so, that is something that by next year we could certainly stop doing if we wanted to see, what the impact was on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for the secondary then, and for the diagnostic portion, we would all the middle schools would just be using it 3 times a year, 1 time a year?
3 times a year for the middle school.
And then the high school, the tool would be used?
One time probably in the 9th grade. Like I said, we were kind of in open discussions in terms of, because we're not otherwise getting any kind of diagnostic at the end of the year to see what the growth was. And so there was a discussion around maybe the first part of the year and the end of the year, especially for 9th and 10th grade. Right. So, and they could take it at the same time that the 11th graders are taking the CASP.
And don't forget the IEP even goes into secondary too.
Right. Well, and that could be something too, that even, somebody, a case manager could decide I'm going to give Jimmy the iReady assessment because I
Right.
want the data for the IEP.
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
that would be, it wouldn't be contingent on what
Case
we're
by
talking
case
about here.
then on that?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely case by case.
Okay, great. Any other comments from the board?
Do we
All
have,
right,
do we have direction?
No, well,
Oh, we need
well, I still have
one comment.
one comment from the public, Mr. Stan Jones.
I only get 3 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I understand. So, I've been doing this for several years, and this is a chart from SARC scores. And I did it with STAR before for a little bit too of what it projected. And my example is last June we graduated somewhere around 100 African American students from Cordova High School. 90% of them failed the test the previous year when they were juniors at Cordova High School. So I say, what are we doing for these people? You know, and I don't know any of them really at all, but I asked Mr. Clark, I shared the data with him, and the data doesn't change much. And if you look at the data between, look down here between two middle schools, you see great differences. And so one of the things you also see, and I have only 3 weeks experience at Mills Middle School, math, kids coming before the first period. I'm not in a math classroom. Kids come early and they're going to have breakfast, poor kids. And some of them come and ask me, and they show me iReady screen. What am I going to do to help? Now, there's really problems here for somebody like me as a volunteer math tutor. I kind of left that environment because I really can't function. The state and federal government defines limits my access to knowledge from iReady or something else. Even the teacher's knowledge and access to iReady report to understand where the student is to help. There's a particular girl, she's from Afghanistan, and so she's struggling at some grade level, and she's an 8th grade student. Well, there was another girl who came the same day. I give her a clue as to what the same problem is that's displayed from iReady, and she's off. She understands it. Light bulb went off, and bingo, she's there and beyond. I wrote a note here, and it says, you know, when using iReady, how do we use the reports to identify individual knowledge and skills that are missing in here? Obviously, the one girl has something missing here. I can't help her here because she's missing something. Where do we, as teachers or tutors, find out what they're missing? Because if we don't know where to go. We don't know how to help.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jones. And I just want to say that, you know, maybe, and then I'm willing to sit down and go over the numbers and see where we can go with this. I'm not sure if any other board member would like to do that, but I'm game to sit down, look at numbers, and see where we can go with this in any way I can help, okay?
And at Mills, the majority of math classrooms are above 33, according to SARC. If you're trying to find, and we have kids with 4 grade level difference, and you're trying to help them, we need the teacher assistants, instructional aides that are in those classrooms, and we need to give them access to the data that will allow them to help. For my own child, currently attending FCC charter, Folsom Cordova charter, my wife and I haven't been able to get an iReady report. So if you talk about it, using one, you have to have one to use it, and the teacher says she can't get it.
Hmm.
And I've had 2 schools tell me that. So I don't know how you're gonna, you need something though. I'll have the conversation. I'll
Sure.
pursue a conversation.
And with that being said, maybe I'll ask the superintendent to reach out to you to see if we can get those numbers, the data information for you, Mr. Jones, okay?
Mr. Clark, I'd like to reiterate Dr. Huber's recommendation, and I know if Mr. Wilson were here, he would also support option 3. The reason, again, as Dr. Huber stated, is the access to the diagnostic and the online curriculum for the elementary. The reports that the principals use are critical data points in their Every Child by Name, which is part of our multi-tiered systems of support, and the RTI and the different ways that we support students in how we intervene on students. And, you know, I think there is more work to do for 6 through 12, but I also agree that having a year to study that, to get feedback from our teachers, possibly to look at other products that are out there, this gives us time to do that. Our K-12 instructional, K-12 curriculum instruction specialists can work side by side with Dr. Huber and Mr. Wilson to explore that. But if we turn the switch off right away without having another plan in place, that's more concerning for me. I'm perfectly fine saying just making it a 1 year with the recommendation to come back and revisit other options.
And I think that's probably the direction that the board is going in, to allow that 1 year to reevaluate and look at everything. I mean, are we on?
I'll make a motion that we adopt option 3.
Well, it's a discussion.
Discussion?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
so it will come back to the board. But
I agree.
I just want to make sure
option
that we're all in
Give direction.
consensus with that, Mr. Reed.
Yeah, I can support option 3 as well, but I would like staff to look into and have a serious conversation with the kindergarten teachers about whether we can remove the technology from kindergarten. And then also would love for the staff to also spend that year researching other products, potentially for all the grade levels, or at the very least, and again, I see the benefit of iReady in certain grades in elementary. At the very least, look at another potential product for secondary. Yeah, and I appreciate the fact that we can't just cut it off and not have something to use. So I would support option 3. And by the way, I do want to thank staff for this thorough presentation you put together. I can tell that you spent a lot of time, and I really, really, really appreciate the fact that you polled the teachers and the students. I think the information that was gleaned from that, when you go through and look at the comments of both the teachers and the students and look at the percentages and the charts, it's very informative, and I think it's a model to do similar things with other topics in the future as well. So thank you very much.
Daniel Thigpen and Pam Oyen were responsible for the majority of that, so I wanted to call out their good work on both of those things.
Yeah.
Good deal.
And I can guarantee we will be glad to do everything that you just outlined over the course of the next year.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Hoover.
Full confidence.
I just want to really quickly echo. I definitely agree with Mr. Reed that in a year I don't want to be sitting here voting again on another 1 year option.
absolutely.
Before that time, I mean, it'd be great to see if we could get a presentation at some point on the different companies that are out there, the different things they're willing to offer us, and pit them against each other. I mean, this is I think an opportunity for us to maybe even save some money by exploring these other options. But it would be great to get a presentation on what's out there, because we're not obviously the experts on these things. So I would love to see that in the future at some point.
That would not be a problem.
Do you think, just to add to your list, do you think about mid-year we can get a report on the progress that we are making in kindergarten and first grade with not using it, perhaps?
I think that's more than doable. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
Thank you very much for your time.
All right. All right. We're at discussion item 14B. Any questions on that one, board? It's the first read.
routine?
Yes, it is routine.
Mr.
Hoover?
On the intra-district transfer, this is one we're on, correct? Bowling.
Yes.
Okay. The intra-district transfer request. I just had a question, and I didn't bring it up beforehand, so no worries if it can't be answered tonight. But what's the policy generally on approving intra-district transfers? Do we generally approve them? Do we generally not approve them? I guess I'm just curious to know what, and if later, what some of the numbers would be on percentages on how often we approve or disapprove these.
I'm going to ask Ms. Alleman to answer that question, please.
Certainly, we do approve interdistrict transfers out of our district for a variety of reasons. Those actually start with our attendance and due process office. So Mr. Scott Meyer probably has the numbers at his fingertips faster than I do. I work more with the intra-district, which is choice. This particular board policy, though, is consistent with our practice, our current practice.
Okay. Yeah. I just would love to see, not tonight, but just maybe some numbers on what gets approved or if we ever reject them as well. I'd just be interested in.
Are you talking about the interdistricts that come to us or the interdistricts that go out of our district?
When a student applies for choice in another district, we have to sign off on that. I'm assuming that's what this bullying issue is. So I just would love to get the numbers on, like the percentages on how often we sign off on that or how often we reject those transfers. Yeah.
Certainly we can do that.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions from the public? None. All right. 14C. That's also pretty routine, but I'll entertain any questions from the board. None. From the public? I see none. All right. Item 15. 15A. Update on coronavirus, COVID-19. Superintendent?
Well, I know this is at the top of everybody's mind and almost occupying everybody's waking moments, whether they're at home or at work or at play, and it definitely is a priority in our district as well. We have been putting out messaging to our staff, our families, our community through our respective counterpart city groups, and we want to make sure that we are following Sac County Public Health directives as well as SCOE directives and working in conjunction with them, and also listening to the governor's executive orders today, taking that into account. So we know we are in times where we are not the health experts and we have to rely on the health experts. And in our district, I want to acknowledge and recognize Carrie Kay, our Director of Health Services, who has done an amazing job, not only throughout this episode of this strain of the flu, but for everything. And she just has such a calm demeanor. So Carrie, thank you. And I want to thank Mr. Thigpen too in the communication piece and putting it all together and messaging it. These are not easy tasks, but these are difficult times, and I know everybody is concerned, first and foremost for the health and safety of themselves and their students too. So with that, we just put out the latest update based on the advisory from County Public Health and the governor's executive orders today. That is on our website. Was posted up there about 5:30, and I'll invite Ms. Carrie Kay to come forward to answer any specific questions that we can at this point in time. Thank you, Carrie.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
I think Kelly's going to bring up the latest update on the website. Just thinking about it. But I know you all had an opportunity to look at that. Do you have any specific questions that I can address at this point?
Not so much a question, I guess probably more of a concern with everything around us closing for preventative reasons. I just got, a message that Sacramento City Unified just closed their schools down. And I'm just wondering, what chances are we taking here? I mean, with everybody around us, even Folsom Lake College to other entities shutting down, that are we going to be the only ones open? I mean, when do we say, okay, maybe we need to take some measures and put something in place here, just for the safety of our kids? I mean, that's kind of becoming my concern right now. I mean, Jesus, if you look around, the little leagues are canceled, basketball, everything else is just canceling, but we remain open. And I know we're working with the county and all the other, bodies, but
it's a tough place to be in, isn't
it? It is a tough place.
And to the Sac City decision, I don't know their specifics. I do know they had a substitute teacher who did test positive.
Right.
But hasn't been in their school system for I think about 2.5 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
They're closing Monday through Wednesday of next week, but not tomorrow.
Okay, and then my other
some of the decision processes, as I think we've all talked about, they're so fluid,
Right.
and it's hard. The direction that we're getting and have chosen to continue with at this point is the direction from both the state of California that schools are essential, and to the extent that we can, until we have a directive from local health department to close one or more, we're going to try to stick with that.
Yeah, I'm just kind of sharing my concerns about that. That's all.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there are like extra outside activities that we could maybe mitigate, like if they're congregating and events and stuff like that. So we're already doing.
We are
this.
doing that. That was the information that was put out this evening to you all ahead of time, and then to the public around 5:30 on our website.
Okay, I just want everybody to know that, or the public.
Right.
Those restrictions are going into place effective tomorrow through the spring break. So those are the guidance, light guidelines that we got today on social distancing and not having gatherings of more than 250 folks. And if you are bringing people in, to be able to show that you can keep space, as we did today in our boardroom, of 3 feet. And anyone who is health compromised or elderly are advised to, not put themselves in harm's way in being in those larger gatherings.
Right. In my understanding, so field trips, everything.
Correct.
Okay.
I got a question.
Ms. Ranking.
So, Carrie, thank you for all your work. I was going to thank you in my comments, but I'll do it now. I know you've been working very diligently on this and on top of this, and you're doing a fabulous job.
Thank you.
The way you explain things and your mannerisms, so thank you. So what would prompt us to make a change if we get a call tomorrow and we find out that we have an employee or a student positive at one school? What would probably be the protocol that we would be?
That was part of a conversation this afternoon. That is directed by Sacramento County Public Health, and it's also the guidelines that were put out on Saturday from the state health department. If we were to have a confirmation from our local health department, it has to come from those recognized experts. It can't come from hearsay. It can't come from the parent calling us. We would have to verify that. And then we would take the steps, and the recommendation most likely at that point would be to close the school affected or the schools affected, but not an entire district at that point. And then the question becomes, well, for how long? And that was not specifically addressed. That's one of those hot points that I think we would take it as it comes and look at what is our goal when we're closing that school. Are we trying to achieve a certain level of sanitizing and time in between having the students there? And that's also one of those ever-changing conversations.
And my concern, not only for the students, but our teachers. I mean, a prime example spoke tonight that she's in a vulnerable group.
Right.
So we're in a interesting position. So we'll have to see, how this moves out and plays out.
Mr. Reed?
Carrie, do you know, is the state direction and policy on this particular issue, is it coming out of the governor's office, or what role is the California Department of Education playing in this? And I assume probably Department of Education and the governor's office hopefully are working closely together. in providing guidance to the school districts in the state. Is that accurate?
That is, I believe, was it Saturday that we got CDE updates as well as California state level health department and then the governor's office. They are working in conjunction with one another.
I mean, I would agree that, I mean, there is a little bit of irony here that the least, the population with the lowest level of concern is our young and children. And it's also the population that in school environments are the most tightly condensed population in our society, whether it's in the lunchroom or in the locker room or in the hallways or in the classrooms and switching classrooms. So we're taking the least susceptible part of the population and mixing them up and then sending them home to the more susceptible generations of the population. And we are, as a society, canceling sports leagues and intercollegiate competitions. And it does seem a little ironic that the state policy would be, let the petri dish of the public school systems or the education systems at K-12 to continue, even though they're canceling and going online at the collegiate level. So I guess I'm a little confused at the public policy directives that we're getting from I guess the governor and the Department of Education here.
I think to that it can't be a specific answer, but it's a whole new world out there. This is so different than H1N1, which was our last public health crisis, I think 10 or 11 years ago. So they're learning as they go, as we all are. We're developing policies and procedures as we go. It's hard. Up until recently, there were no confirmed diagnoses in ages 15 and under. And there's a lot of speculation as to why. Is that because they have different and more robust immune systems because they're exposed to things more than we are as adults, because they're in those different more close-knit environments? So there's a lot to be learned when we get to the other side of this.
I think the governor meant between essential services and non-essential functions. So schools are essential.
Schools are essential.
Mr. Jones, did you have a comment? Yes. Yeah, it's good.
For now.
For now.
And the timeline on it is until April 13, which is the Monday before we come back after spring break. And we'll reevaluate. Come back on Tuesday.
So are we canceling out the whole athletic program, kind of like track, or is that?
It's a shortened middle school season.
Yeah.
Track is a short schedule for middle school.
It is.
4 weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
It'll be over by the 15th.
And many other districts have already made that decision. So if you're trying to be competitive with other districts, we don't, they're not participating either.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we can ask Mr. Maroon to comment on the other athletics, perhaps at the high school level as well.
So several of the school districts have canceled their athletic events as well, which has made it difficult for us. For instance, Ponderosa High School withdrew from a game today that was supposed to happen at Vista. A swim meet with Rio Americana was canceled as well. So we're having to, obviously address those things, and our priority is our student safety, obviously. Sure. And then putting kids at risk is not something that we want to do. So we're going to, take steps that we're going to follow the lead, so to speak, with the rest. As you know, the NBA is canceled. Major League Baseball, soccer, NCAA March Madness is canceled. The state canceled the state championship this weekend at Golden One. So it kind of would be weird for us to continue, and everybody else around us is not. We're going to have to compete against ourselves, apparently. But you know, in the best interest of our kids and our coaching and our staff, I think, you know, we need to take some precautionary measures and get our students and our coaches in the place where they need to be. Our major concern is actually spectators. Having spectators come to large venues and events would really put some people at risk, and that's something we really don't want to take. Okay. That's why also the Cordova Invitation was canceled this weekend.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Which is similar to what Granite Bay had done as well.
Too bad.
Rich,
Okay.
just a couple things.
Yes, sir.
So first off, I want to thank you for all of the work that everyone has done on this. And it is a very fluid situation, and you know, we're kind of having to adjust things as we go. I want to thank you for the staff and the board for supporting shifting the field trip cancellation starting tomorrow as opposed to Monday. I also want to thank the board and the staff for live streaming these events at Mr. Reed's suggestion, the next 2 meetings, because I do think that that's a very important part of you know, getting people access to the meetings without having to come in here and potentially be exposed to something. So thank you for that. And I did have a question about I think you know, it's important to follow the guidance of health officials, and it seems like at this point it's, you know, if something happens, then we will make that decision at that time to close a school site, for example, not necessarily the district. So I definitely want to defer to them on those issues. In the event that that happens, and you know, I think given what we have seen recently, it seems likely that at least some point we're going to have to face this decision, because I just don't see, you know, I don't think there's a bubble around our district necessarily. So in the event that that happens, do we have a plan, or can we develop a plan? And I know this would have to happen very quickly on how we could offer academic, you know, remote academic opportunities to our students without losing ADA, you know, potentially during those shutdowns. Could we go to some sort of like remote model, or would we have to just, you know, extend the school year out? I guess I just, you know, has there been any thought that has gone into that? And I just, you know, I know this is not an easy thing to do. So, but, you know, what are the options? And if not that, then, you know, is it a waiver process? You know, do we hope the state will help us out?
And I think I can address that. We've had several conversations with the other neighboring district superintendents and our county superintendent on those very questions about remote learning if, you know, every district closed down. And the first question that we're asked is, does every student have equal access to the ability to online instruction at home? And with 60% of the state of California students on free and reduced lunch, the answer statewide is no, not at this moment. So, you know, our colleagues in the county right now are not making plans for that because they don't have the resources at this moment to do it. The question is the state willing to step up and say, this is a priority? If districts are closing down and we want online instruction to happen, will they step up and say, this is, you know, we're going to make this a priority and make sure every student in the state of California has that access? In the meantime, because we're not there, and you can't flip a switch for that either at statewide, there is a waiver process. If we go through the county public health process in determining the need to close a school or close a district, and they've helped us with that determination because they're the health experts, then they can help us through a waiver process with the state to get that waived for the instructional time that we may miss, instead of adding additional days at the end of the year or being penalized for loss of ADA. So there are many ways that we can navigate that with the state through the county's support. So that's what's in place at this point in time that I think our neighboring districts that have made those decisions will be relying on and navigating. But the processes are there, and the county's there to help us with that process.
I hear some jurisdictions are changing their spring break calendar. Have we looked at that?
Well, we heard that that was going to happen in our neighboring district, and instead of, that was the initial intent, and now they closed for a week, and they're going to still do a spring break. The restrictions that we've put on the social distancing and minimizing opportunities for larger gatherings is through spring break. So I think overall what we're hearing from the state level is try to minimize as much as we can in each of our jurisdictions that are under our authority, the time for people to gather and come together in large groups, especially when you've got a mix of different kinds of health issues of people, not only in the school system, but in our communities and larger areas.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I greatly appreciate it.
Mhm.
All right. Oh, yeah, sure.
Just one, obviously, the health of our students and staff is the primary concern, and the health of our community is the primary concern. But if we do decide to close down the school district, especially for an extended period of time, that will have a significant impact on the families, especially if they don't have another way, if they have to take off time from work and don't have a way to earn income for their family. So I think that is a big concern too. And so jumping to shutting the school down and then finding out that we have to do it for many, many, many weeks, I think could have a big financial impact on those families.
Oh, yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you, Rob. All right, reports to the Board of Education, Superintendent.
Well, there are some great things to celebrate this week. We did the grand opening of the Cordova High Safe Credit Union Student Branch, which is a first for our district. That was very exciting, and to see our Business Academy students through CTE manning that branch along with their teachers is really exciting. I also want to thank our SkillsUSA students from Folsom High. They're doing an incredible job as well and in presenting themselves this evening. Also want to thank our Student Advisory Board for giving us time to dialogue with Student Voice through Student SAB on the LCAP, the budget, and doing a listening circle, which was really helpful for our staff and myself. Also want to thank FCEA and CSEA for giving us that opportunity, and we'll continue to work with those groups, as Ms. Crawford said as well. And we have other exciting news to share about ACTS Administrators of the Year for Region 3, which is our local region. 3 of the winners are from our district: Mike Shepard, Director of Human Resources; Alicia Cadell, Coordinator of CTE, who we saw earlier this evening; and Amy Strawn, International Baccalaureate Coordinator. So, round of applause for all 3. Thank you.
All right. Student Board.
No comment.
Ms. Ranking.
I was also going to mention Alicia, Amy, and Mike. Congratulations. Used to be when I would go to school sites and chat, I'd always get positive comments about Jim Bonovich. He's wonderful. Everyone always had wonderful things to say to him about him. I'll give him one last plug here. But now I'm hearing wonderful things, and this is great news, about Dr. Cook Harvey and Geo and Scott Meyer, and about their support of students and staff and being the group that comes in and provides assistance. And I'm just so thrilled to be hearing these things, and thank you. Thank you you are very much appreciated. So thank you.
Mr. Short.
Congratulations also. And also, Daniel, you've been awesome. And you really taught us a lot of what really you can do in communication. So congratulations, and you'll be well missed. So thank you for all what you've done for the district and the kids. It's been awesome. You're exemplary. So I think it shows for what this district is all about. So thank you for that. Good representation. So don't forget about us. Okay. Also want to thank staff for all the work they did on the coronavirus and updates. And that's a lot of hard work. And also the budget. Don't forget the budget. You always do an excellent job. I just need a deficit factor. But also, I want to say thank you to everybody. And gracias para todo. yo pueda hablar español, and I think the people out there will know that, and we'll get through this virus threat. So hopefully just don't panic, stay calm, and I think we're seeing that here, that we're going to be calm and we're going to do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons. So I have a lot of confidence in this district. We have a good district, and thank you for all that, including all the staff and the representation that we have here. Thank you. ¿Hablas español? Ándale. Un poco. Okay.
Mr. Reed?
Yeah, I would echo the comments of my colleague as well, and thank the staff for your professionalism. I know it's a challenging time right now. Things are changing very quickly, and your attentiveness to everything and keeping the board informed, as well as the parents and the students and the teachers. I know it's challenging, especially when things and information is changing so quickly, but you're doing a wonderful job. I also want to echo my colleagues' comments and congratulations to Daniel. It's going to be nice to have a friend over in the California Department of Education's office. So, so maybe we'll be in touch. And then the only other thing that I would request, if my colleagues think that this is appropriate, is maybe at least for the next school board meeting, maybe the next two school board meetings, having just an agenda item on the COVID-19, so that we have a place that we can continue discussion
Absolutely.
In open session.
It's granted.
And we'll keep live streaming just for that reason.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Mr. Hoover.
Yeah, I concur. It's been a long meeting. But yeah, those two things I think would be absolutely critical. I know that there's a lot of fear out there, and people are scared, and people are worried, and part of the issue is that there's just, they need information. And so to the extent that we can continue to provide direction and information to our parents and our families and our students and our teachers, I think all the better. So thank you for the around the clock work that everyone is undertaking to make that happen. I know that this is something that really kind of puts a lot of things on hold, and a lot of important things have to get pushed aside. But the important thing is that we're being responsive, and I've just been very thankful for the work everyone's done so far.
All right, thank you. And in closing, I want to also echo the sentiments of my colleagues and congratulate all the staff that's deserving of that. Great meeting, great dialogue. Honestly, I expected a certain person to come out and share his views on this district-wide election thing that did not come into fruition, and I'm glad that it didn't, because I think our board stands in unity, and I think we were ready to debate with him more or less. So I'm just thankful that didn't happen. I know that we're going to move forward with this. Looking forward to seeing what the demographer does, looking forward to more public comment and a few more public notices, but we'll get this thing done, and I think it's just going to better our district. Like I said earlier, we're all in. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a school in Rancho Cordova, if it's a school in Folsom. It doesn't matter. We are a board. We're a very tight-knit board, and we look out for the best interests of all our kids in the district. So I appreciate all of you for the work that you put in. With that being said, meeting adjourned.